here's the thing. If you're feeling helpless, one of the antidotes to feeling helpless is to get more helpful. And one of the ways you can be most helpful is to raise your own identity. Our identity is the core part of our lives. We're not going to outperform our identity. Our identity, best said, is it's the thoughts, concepts, and beliefs we hold to be the most true about ourselves. It's really the invisible force in all of our lives that holds us back or can accelerate our success, our bliss, our achievements to whole new levels. If you look at identity, if you think about it, it's almost like it's a life thermostat. See, in this room right now, there's a thermostat sitting on that wall right now. And if it's set at 75 degrees, this room is going to be regulated to 75 degrees. No matter what the external conditions are, it could be 100 degrees outside. The external factors do not impact the internal thermostat in this room. It's 75 degrees. Consequently, also, if it was 40 degrees outside, the heater will come on. It'll heat this room to 75 degrees. That's how your identity works. It's the internal thermostat of your life. And that's why very often, let's say that, relationships or financially, you're a 75 degreer. And if you ever notice in your life, as you start to heat life up a little bit, it starts to go pretty well. Maybe your relationship's blissful and loving and incredible, or financially, you've increased your results. You're at 80, 85, 90, 100 degrees of success financially or in business. And then it just seems coincidental, but somehow, some way, the air conditioner kicks on in our lives. A car breaks down, an event happens, we lose an account, something takes place, and all of a sudden, we look up and boom, life's back at 75 degrees of relationship, of money, of business. That wasn't by coincidence. It is the regulator of your life, is your identity. And so if you can do all the right things, all the activities, all of the thinking, all of the execution part, but if you don't increase what you believe you're worth, if you don't increase that identity, that thermostat of your life, you will find a way to cool your life back down to what you believe you deserve. And so one of the keys for me in my life is not just getting better at the mindset of life and the execution of business or strategy, but raising that identity so that I'm at 85, 90, 100, 120 degrees, so that I believe I'm worthy of, as my execution and my thinking reaches the same level, that thermostat setting, that life setting will change. It's not the external conditions of our life that dictate the terms. It's that identity. It's that thermostat setting. So we got to get more helpful if we feel helpless. And the way we do that is by increasing our own identity, that thermostat setting. That sounds great, doesn't it? So how do you do that? Well, I call it the holy trilogy of shifting one's identity, and that is faith, intention, and association. That's the three things you must work on in order to increase your thermostat setting. Number one, faith. For me, it's the center part of my life, is that I have a God who loves me, that believes in me, that wants to see me successful, wants to see me prosper, wants to have favor in my life, wants me to feel comfort and peace. And so I find oftentimes it's interesting, people of faith sometimes, God's in their life Sunday at church when they're worshiping, or they're in Bible study, or when they're eating a meal, they'll pray over it. But somehow when they walk into a business meeting, a speech, a boardroom, a client environment, they leave God at the door and they think they're on their own. So for me, if you're a person of faith and God is with you all the time, and he loves you all the time, and he comforts you all the time, that includes business. That includes every area of your life. It includes him wanting to bless you with a great relationship, bless you financially, bless you to the best of your abilities in business. And then whatever the other, if you're an athlete watching this, bless you in that at bat, over that putt, catching that football, hitting that shot. And so number one source of shifting your thermostat setting is reconnecting again with your faith and allowing yourself to feel it inside all the other environments that exist. Then there's number two, there's your intentions. See, I don't think enough people give themselves credit for having great intention. There's a power to intention in our lives. And so what most of us think is, I'll feel better about myself, or I'll be more confident when I get that job, when I get that relationship, when I get this amount of money, when I get that house, when I hit that home run, when I'm hitting a certain average, right? And so you're always chasing your tail. If your identity and your confidence is contingent upon producing a result that has not yet existed, it's pretty difficult to catch it, isn't it, if you have to have it to get it in the first place? Instead of saying, maybe I ought to get credit and I ought to be worthy of more because I intend to do well. As a young man in business, I started to figure out, I may not have all the answers. I may not be the smartest, the best looking, the most articulate. My IQ isn't 250, but I intend to serve. I intend to make a difference. I make mistakes, but overall, I'm a good person who wants to do good in the world, and I should be favored because of that. Not enough of you are giving yourself credit for your intentions. You want to shift your identity overnight? Connect with your faith. You want to double shift it? Connect with your intentions. So when I go into a business meeting, or I go into a lunch, or I'm going into any type of encounter, even in my golf life, in my sport I play, I remind myself that I've got a God who loves me, who wants me to win, who wants me to be blessed, who wants me to be favored, who wants me to feel peace. Number two, I intend to do good. I'm a decent human being. And you know what? Good things ought to happen to good people. And then third is association. You are who you hang around. See, if you're a 85 degree or 75 degree or financially, but you start hanging around someone, say like myself, who lives at 140, 150 degrees of finances and wealth and abundance, you will get heated up by proximity to somewhere in between the two of us and a lot closer to where I am than where you are. Same thing in relationships. If you want to have a great, loving relationship in your life, but you're living at 75 degrees in your relationships, you start hanging around people who are in loving, beautiful relationships, your thermostat setting will increase. Same within your faith life. If you want to start walking with more faith in your 75 degrees of faith, if you start hanging around people who walk their faith life at 100, 150 degrees, you'll be heated up through proximity. And so these are the three things we do in order to shift our lives. Our identity is the governor on our life. It is the most powerful force in the world. It's the invisible force that governs everything, is that thermostat setting. And then if that's true, the way we shift it is always going to be our faith, our intentions, and our associations. And those associations are so huge. I know you've all heard you're the product of who you hang around the most often, but look at the last 90 days of your life, okay? And ask yourself this question. Other than, say, your spouse or children, who are the 2 or 3, 4 people you've spent the most time with? Picture their faces in their lives right now. And then I want you to measure one thing. What's their emotional maturity like? See, what I find with all successful people is they have a degree of emotional maturity that other people are absent of. So I always measure, what's their emotional maturity? How do they handle success? How do they handle failure? How do they handle their lives? Then ask yourself this. These 3 or 4 people you've been around, can you immediately name 2 or 3 things that they have in their life in an area that matters to you? Let's say it's money. Let's just say it was money. That they have that you don't have that you wish you did have? Or in relationships, can you name 2 or 3 things in their relationships that they have that you wish you had? Or in business? Or in their physical body? And if you can't immediately go, yeah, they got 2, 3, 4 things, man, I would love to have that in my life, then I'm not so sure that that's the person you ought to spend the most time with. The reverse question is also, hey, can you name 2 or 3 things they have that you definitely don't want? When you look at their financial life, if finances are important to you, or do they have 2 or 3 things going on in their life financially you definitely want no part of? Or in their relationship life, if you want a better relationship, if you look at the relationship, there are 2 or 3 things like, I wouldn't want that relationship. I don't like the way he or she treats them, or they get treated. You can look at that. Or their physical body. You want to be in really great shape. You look at them. Do they have 2 or 3 things about their health or wellness that you don't think are really great? Well, that's an immediate sign maybe they're the wrong people. And so taking an evaluation of who your associations are they emotionally mature? Do they have the 2 or 3 things you would like to have in your life they have in theirs that you'd like to get heated up and get? Or do they have 2 or 3 things you want to avoid? These are signs that you should be away from them. So the way we get more helpful is we increase our identity, and we increase our identity by working on our faith, our intention, and our associations. If you do those 3 things, I believe you're going to live happier, you're going to help other people become happier, you're going to make a contribution in people's lives that's deeper and more meaningful than you've ever made before. And by the way, lastly, that's what you were put here to do. You were put here, you were born to do something great with your life. In small ways and big ways, you were made to do something awesome with your life. Maybe not all of it's going to get limelight or notoriety, but you were born to make a difference in the world. And the more you realize that, the more you step into your intention, the more you step into the person you're capable of becoming, the more you just decide, I'm raising that thermostat setting. I'm no longer this other character I was playing. At any point, you and God are the authors of your life. You can grab the pen and start to write a new chapter and say, I'm stepping into this new character. Their identity's higher. They're more faithful. They focus on their intentions more often. They improve their associations, and they help people. Well, I hope I'm doing that for you, quite frankly. That's why I exist. Hey, it's Ed Mylett. I just wanted to thank you for being here, and I would ask you to please subscribe to the show. If you just click the subscribe button here, I would really appreciate it. It helps the show grow so we can get even more successful guests on the program to help you. At the same time, if you're subscribed, you're going to get access to the programs before anybody else in the world gets access to them. So if you would, click subscribe right here. Thanks so much. Next thing that I love that you write about. This is so good, by the way, brother. I told you we're going to go a certain amount of time. We're probably going to go a little bit longer because it's so good. Identity. We both talk about identity a great deal, and I think it's almost invisible to most people. So, when you really listen to someone or you watch them,
you can begin to hear their identity. I'm working with a couple new athletes right now, and people ask me all the time, what do you work with when you're with athletes? Or what do you work with when you're with a CEO of a company or an entertainer or whatever? It might be Say My Name, which I think might be Beyonce. I'm not completely right. Am I right about that?
Probably, yeah.
I am right about that. The fact that I know that is pretty bizarre. And if I'm wrong, it's close enough, everybody. But it was rattling in my head.
Yeah.
So anyway, I might be right. It's close. But what I work with, usually when I'm talking with athletes or working with them, there's all kinds of different techniques. But at the end of the day, if I distilled it down, it's both their confidence and their identity. At the top levels, people still struggle with confidence. When you see an athlete go in a slump, is it they don't know how to hit anymore?
Yeah.
No. A couple negative results happened. They started to move towards that story, and all of a sudden they're lacking confidence. And so if you have to work on your self-confidence or your identity, welcome to being a human. And I'm talking about people that have led big countries, run big companies, are the top athletes in the world. I think a lot of people think, well, I struggle with my confidence, so I'm not like these other people. It's natural to them. Yeah, right, until they have a big setback. And then it's not so natural.
Yeah.
Or they just have this amazing identity, and they just have more, until they don't anymore, until the success is stripped of them. So how does one begin to build a new identity, and how important is it?
It's everything. You know, your identity is your most critical story that's inside of you that shapes everything you see. Like, we think we see the world with our eyes, right? We think we hear things with our ears, but you really don't. You hear with your story, right? You see with your story. And identity is like your truest, most precious part of your story, the one that you're going to like stand up for day after day. And a lot of people do have identities that are not supporting them. They have identities or belief systems around, like I've written a couple books on speaking, public speaking, right? I've been speaking all around the world for years and years and years. And so we'll train somebody and they'll go, I always get nervous right before I speak. And what I try and do is like, that can't be the way you think about this. And they go, well, no, I get over it. I go, yeah, but nervousness, you're either in one of two emotional states. I'm going to generalize here a little bit. When you do anything, you're either in a protective state. You're walking in, like if I come in here and I'm going, all right, I don't know this guy. What's he going to ask me? I'm in a protective state. I'm not going to be as good. Words aren't going to flow. The mind's not going to work. Or I'm in a growth state, right? Like I've already flubbed some words, made some mistakes. I don't even worry about that when I'm speaking. I don't even worry about that. I probably made like 84 mistakes already.
I don't think so.
Right? If we've been counting. Yeah, I'm just kidding. I've been counting. But it doesn't bother me, right? Because I'm not worried about that. My identity is not that I've got to be perfect every single time. My identity is just, I give everything I've got. I'm going to just pour everything I have into this, and we're going to have some fun. But my identity, and I'm sure yours, has shifted a lot, from childhood. I was that person that thought life was hard. I was that person that thought life wasn't freaking fair, man. How come I don't have a dad? I had to shift that. And at the core of who we are is our identity. And when you really get clear on what that is, you can, and if you don't like it, you don't have to stick with it, right? You can shift it and change it. I love what you were saying earlier. To me, it's like carving away at something.
Yeah.
So I don't look at it as like one and done, right? I know there's some lag time, but I'm just going to carve away today, carve away. And then it does start feeling more and more real, and then you're living it.
Yeah.
And then life is so much easier because you're not even seeing the same world you used to see.
So true.
It's a completely different world you're experiencing. And that may be hard for people to imagine. Like, what do you mean it's a different world? Like everyone sees the same thing? No, they don't.
Yeah.
I had a friend, I was in a car accident. It wasn't bad, but we were in Hawaii. This friend of mine, CEO of a company, was driving. His daughter was in the back. She was like 6 years old, and somebody hit him in from behind. So his experience was he's pissed off. Like gets out, he's kind of angry. And I'm sitting in the car. His daughter in the back, she called me Uncle T. She goes, "Hey, Uncle T." He goes, "Can we go out and look?" She goes, "This is so exciting, right? I've never been in an accident before." Right. So people don't see the same thing.
They do not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, brother, that is such a good example. On identity, there's little pieces of ourselves that we begin to realize. Like I used to hear people say, I'll give you one little subtle thing that might help everybody. I was just thinking of it when you said it. And I say this often too, like the separation is in the preparation, I say, or like, a lot of my confidence comes from how prepared I am.
Yeah.
It's a real fine line with that though, because years ago, it drifted into something dangerous for me. So yeah, I do think you need to be prepared. But I think a lot of people, what holds them back is the threshold of what they think they need to know before they act.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
Absolutely.
So like they get this preparation thing conflated where they go, yeah, and so I'm just preparing.
Yeah.
And if I just knew a little bit more about it, if I was a little bit more prepared, if I had a little bit more knowledge, if I went to one more seminar, if I read one more book, if I just had one more exercise, then I'd take action. What I find is the identity level of people that do find bliss, do find successes, their threshold for what they think they need to know before they leap is lower.
That's right.
And the people that struggle, the threshold of what they think they need to know or be prepared or capable of is so high that they never quite meet that threshold to take a leap. That was just a subtle thing for me to change.
That is such a great point, because there's people in life that whatever they do, they just seem to get the ball in the end zone.
Yes.
Right. And were they more prepared? Maybe, but a lot of times they weren't. And then there's people and they're good people, but they always need that extra little thing, and that, they're never quite ready, and everything looks good, and then it doesn't work out.
Yep.
I do a little test with this stuff on me, and I'm sure you do it on you too. But I do some crazy things, right? Like I was asked years ago, actually it was 2005, so it was many years ago, I was asked to play in this poker tournament. Now, I'd played poker exactly one time in my life, and it was back in college, so it was 20 years before.
Yeah.
And these guys are saying, come on, it's going to be great. There's going to be some World Series of Poker players that play in the World Championships that are going to be there. And I'm like, guys, I don't even know how to play. Like, I don't even remember anything. They go, oh, yeah, come on, you're going to be fun. So I said, all right, I'll do it. And I said, you got to spend, I told one of the guys, you got to spend 10 minutes with me and just show me the hands, like, and remind me of the rules and things like that.
Right,
yeah,
right.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But I didn't watch, and because I don't play poker. I haven't played since, but I didn't watch tutorials. I didn't read books. And I only had like a week to prepare. But here's what I did. Every time, because my identity was, at first, it was like, I'm going to suck at this. I'm going to embarrass myself. I'm going to lose early. And I'm like, no, stop that. Stop. I said, put a new thought process in, put a new belief system in. And literally, this is crazy, but I told myself over and over again that I made great decisions and I found a way to win. And every time I thought of it, and I didn't proactively think of it a lot, but every time I thought about it, oh, that thing's coming up. Yep, I made great decisions, found a way to win. Now, when I said it, though, I was like in a confident state, right? I made sure I matched what I wanted to the emotional state that I wanted to have. And I literally believed that I was going to win the damn thing, right? Yeah. And so I remember I'm getting ready to leave, and my wife knew I'd never played before or played once. And I said, hey, I'm getting ready to leave, go to that poker tournament. She goes, what time's it start? I said, 6:30. She goes, I'll see you at 7. And so, anyways, I went. I didn't even let that, right? Because you have the naysayers. Yeah. No, she was just playing with me. Yep. We've been married 30 years. You just met her.
Yep.
But beautiful I went, couple. And I just, I had this confidence, like unearned confidence.
Yeah.
Totally unearned confidence. But people are making mistakes, and I win my table, and then I get, finally the championship table, and now I have one guy left. I had like this huge pile of chips, and he didn't have as many, but he was like, one of these really good players, and people are saying, oh, this guy's beating you, doesn't know how to play, and the guy's getting pissed off, and he goes all in, I go all in, and, I win, and
that's awesome.
My friends are picking me up, and I got this, big, huge trophy and bracelet and all this kind of stuff.
I love it.
And so I come back, it's like 2 a.m. I open the door of the bedroom, my wife's long asleep, turn the light on, guess who you're sleeping with tonight?
I love that.
Now that, I'm not saying I could have done that 10 times in a row, but literally I consciously burned all the boats. I did not allow a thought that was going to lower my confidence in any way. And I did it for about a week, right? So
great.
Yeah, but that's what happens, right? That even if I wouldn't have won, I know I would have played a heck of a lot better because I had done that. That's the thing that most people don't get. Well, I didn't win. Well, were you better? Yeah, okay, then do it.
That's the whole point. By the way, I love that term, unearned confidence. Obviously, the highest form of confidence is something you've earned. But I'm going to tell you something. Unearned confidence is a pretty damn good substitute. And it's a whole lot
when
better.
You got to go.
And by the way, what most people think, this is what they'd say to themselves, I've earned lack of confidence. And so you think you have to earn this confidence thing all the time. It is absolutely not true. And not enough of you give yourself credit for your intentions either. You don't give yourself enough credit just for your intentions to serve, your intentions to contribute. And it's a huge, huge thing. I love that story because, for me, where's it come from for me often? I had 2 friends the last week say something to me. I have a couple things I'm ill prepared for. Like, I have no life experience preparing me for a couple things, kind of like this poker tournament for you. Really good friend of mine, John Gordon, said, and by the way, we've talked a lot about energy today. I'm also a Christian, so I've both. And John's, and he's a good Christian friend of mine. He goes, Ed, faith over fear. Choose faith over fear. I'm like, it feels good, man.
Yeah.
And then like 3 days later, my next door neighbor at the beach, Jerry, if you're listening to this, thank you for this gift. He's like, hey, man, I've just all my life, I've chosen faith over fear.
Yeah.
And it just, I was like, wow. Now that's that vibrational frequency thing, right? Like all of a sudden, both of these messages were being directed to me. For me, that applies to my Christian faith. But for some of you, it might be, I'm going to have faith in the work I've put in. I'm going to have faith that, that everything always works out for me. But sometimes it's just a matter of taking a leap and going, I'm going to choose faith over fear, because what is holding you back is the fear. So I just wanted to share that with everybody.
And one thing on that, Ed, is turn fear into faith. Because fear is energy. But use that energy, shift that energy, and turn it into faith. I used to sometimes, way back in the past, be a little bit jealous. Hey, how that person, accomplish that or do that? And I'm like, hey, that's not a good use of energy. And I turn jealousy into prosperity, right? I just, whenever I go, see someone doing well, I'm like, whoa, great. Hey, this is proving that I can do even more too.
So good.
And literally just shifting energy into another form.
I do want to ask you about this identity thing, because you said, like, your MLB career, I work with a lot of athletes. It is dramatic from being the center of the universe and attention to not a lot. And that fall off can also happen when you're in a relationship and you get a divorce. It probably happened with you too. All of a sudden, an entire set of friends may not any longer be in your life again.
Right.
Or you leave a career, or you have a business failure that sets back. How have you been able to kind of like remake your identity? A lot of people out there, if you're right now, they're like, I don't like my current identity. I'd like to remake me. How have you started that? I'm watching you do it. This is not the same guy who was playing in 2008, right? There's a different person here, a better version of him. How have you done that?
Ed, I'm still working on it.
Of course.
Yeah.
Right.
So when you get out, I threw my hat in so many different arenas, right? I did the 95.7, the game up in San Francisco, where I wake up at 4 in the morning, talk from 6 to 10, drive about sports. Warriors, Giants, the whole deal. I found that very negative. It was a very negative world because people want to hear the trash, right? And I didn't last very long there. Then I went into network marketing. I know you've had your spin with network marketing, and I definitely see the value of network marketing.
Sure.
I just didn't want to be on the phone all day, right?
So wasn't your thing.
It wasn't my thing, and so I did that. I even took a spin at acting.
Okay.
And hell, I even tried to make a comeback with baseball because
That's
my identity was so tight up in being a baseball player. That's all I knew. I was so desperate to come back at 40 that I started making a comeback, and people thought I was losing my marbles. I think I was, but you just try so hard as an athlete to try and to replace that identity that you were for so long.
Yep.
And then there has to become a time where I think in the last couple of years I've done that, where I'm like, you know what? I was blessed to have the life I've had.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Let's raise my kids, and let's give back to other people what you've learned in your life. Because it was so much about me for so long. When I got, what am I going to do? What am I going to do in my life? Am I going to do this? How am I going to be relevant again? And then all of a sudden, the last 2 years, you know what? Let's get this story out. There's a reason I went through all this stuff, the tragedy in my life, the divorce, all this stuff that's coming. I think it's an unbelievable story for people to hear. So if I can let that out and let people out there know that they're not alone in their struggles, man. That's a big purpose. That's my new identity.
So that's right. You just crushed that. So let me say my version of that to you, because I think it's perfect what you just said. The way that you begin to change your identity is exactly what Aubrey just said. And what it is that you find now at this stage of your life what your calling and your purpose is. The irony is your baseball career wasn't your calling. The irony is the mosaic, the story of your life from that 6-year-old incident all the way up to now has put you in now to your purpose. You're in the prime of your life. You're using your story and your purpose, and also your natural giftedness. You're articulate, right? You have a great voice. The way when you tell a story, I can picture you running around the bases. And so that's why this is your time. And for those of you listening to this, the pathway to that new identity is finding your new purpose, your new calling and it'll always be towards the contribution of other people, using either your story or your giftedness, your natural giftedness, to that end. You've heard me say this on my podcast, whether it's your math skills, your speaking skills, your art skills, your nurturing skills, listening skills, compassion, passion, intensity, your concern, your love, your faith, whatever those giftednesses are in the service of other people, that's how you build that new identity. You crush that right there. You crush that right there. All right, last question for you. By the way, I've enjoyed today tremendously.
I have too, man.
And I can't wait to share this with the world. Like, this is it's an overused term, change people's lives, but but this is gonna change some lives. This may even save a couple lives.
Yeah, I like getting soulful, man.
Yeah, and
Yes,
you definitely did that. So the last thing, I ask a lot of my guests this, and so you've made, the other thing about you that's remarkable, and I don't want to lose it in the conversation about all this other stuff, is you've achieved at the highest levels in your life, like way up there. One of 350 people ever to walk the earth, probably one of 100 or 150 people currently living to do what you've done. That's a remarkable achievement around the world. Baseball's a global game. The Dominican market is so big in baseball now. Like, around the world, you're one of 150 people probably actively living to do what you've done. So there's people watching this and listening say, I want to make my dream come true. You know, I want to enter that season of my life where I get to do that stuff for my mom.
Yeah.
I get to do that stuff for my kids. I get to do something even for myself. What would your advice be towards chasing that dream and creating a transformation? They're not on the path they need to be right now. And Aubrey Huff had a cup of coffee with you for a couple minutes. You say, hey man, or hey lady, consider these couple things. This will help you chase your dream.
Well, I think it's just you have to sacrifice. You know, you got to sacrifice a lot of your time to do what you really love. And what I hate, I coach my kids, right? They're 10 and 8 years old.
You're doing it today.
I'm really active in their lives, and I want them to be the best men they can be. And I don't necessarily care if they play professional baseball, whatever it is they want to do. I want to be passionate about what they love. But I always tell them, and I think this goes for everybody. And I can't stand when I hear somebody say, you know, I've had coaches tell me this growing up. Better have a backup plan, a plan B or plan C. To me, that's an easy way out. That's a cop-out, right? I knew, like I told you earlier, I knew I was going to be a Major League Baseball player. And that was my plan A. I didn't have a backup plan. If I didn't make it Major League Baseball, I don't know. It didn't matter. I knew it. I had this delusional quality because when I was in high school, I hit 300 with one home run my senior year.
Man.
Not necessarily the stats of a future professional baseball player. I had to walk onto a junior college, gain 20 pounds of muscle, hit a growth spurt, hit 17 bombs, went to University of Miami, made All-American, it took off. Many people would have quit in high school and gave up. I still had a delusional dream in myself, and I knew that I was going. If I had a backup plan, I would not have.
Shoot.
I would not have went to junior college to walk on. So, to me, take that dream, that A+ dream in your heart, and if you love it, chase it. It may not work out immediately, but it will eventually if you give everything you got to.
Brother, that was gold. I just released it. This won't come out simultaneous, but I released today my interview. I was telling you, I've only chased one guy, which is Sebastian Maniscalco, to do my show.
Right.
His point of the whole interview was, I had no plan B.
Yep.
I was going to be a famous stand-up comedian. There was no plan B. There was no 5-year plan. I was going to go work at Motorola. I was going to do this. You burn the bridge. You get on the other side of your dream, you burn the bridge, and you just pay the price until the dream happens. I love that. That was so good, brother.
One thing I do want them to have in their life that I've worked hard for is I want both of my children to have a safe, stable home that they can raise my grandbabies in someday when they have them. So I am going to make sure they have that.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it's going to trickle out over time. And
Yeah.
they're not going to get a bunch of it. The worst thing I could ever do is give them each $100 million.
Just give them this
When they're
massive
28,
windfall.
no way, man. No
Yeah.
way will I do that to my kids. And I don't think they want it at this stage based on the way they were raised. So there's a way that you can write your trust that dictates when and how and where they get money, and also things they have to achieve in order to get the money. And so mine is beginning to be rewritten that way.
I like that.
Yeah, it's cool.
No, that's awesome. So, you know, speaking of grinding and like all the adversity, while you were talking, it was making me think, like, for me, you know, we're both baseball guys.
Yeah.
And so I just remember I played 8 years in the minors and,
Long time.
you know, independent baseball and everything. And I remember literally taking hundreds of bus rides, staying in motels and making literally $1,200 a month doing that. And I'm like, that made me who I am today.
Yep.
Where I'm like, dude, I'll go sit and coach. I don't really care.
Who cares?
Coach
Right.
is great
Yep.
compared to what I was doing.
Yep.
And so it's just like when you're built in comfort, you don't really flex your muscles and grow and all that.
I'm going to tell you something. This sounds weird. I'm not comfortable in comfort to this day.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable in discomfort. I still have a hard time being comfortable. Like, if we go on vacation, man, it take me 3 or 4 days before I even unwind, and then maybe I got 1 or 2 good days, and then I feel like shit. I need to get back to work, and then, so I'm just sort of I'm 52. I get me now.
Yeah.
I had this illusion or delusion that I'd be a dude who could sit on a beach all day.
No.
And that's what I would do. I just can't. Like, I love work. I love My work is my sport. It's my hobby. I wasn't as good as you, so I didn't have 8 years of minor league ball. I got a little brief taste. I got relieved of my duties early on, but I love how I feel when I end a day that I busted my ass and good stuff happened.
Yeah.
I don't like how I feel. That doesn't mean, man, look, I've had plenty of trips to Cabo where I've had a lot of tequila and a lot of golf and I didn't do a lot of work. I have done that, but I find my tolerance level for doing it is much shorter. Like I'll go 2-3 days. I'm ready to get back. I'm gonna tell you something crazy. I'm 52. I can go anywhere in the world I want to. I have never been on a vacation longer than a week. And on that 1 week vacation, I have never not worked some of the days.
Right.
So like, okay, this is gonna trip people out. Like, I've never been to Europe.
I haven't either.
I haven't been. And to be honest with you, I had a bunch of trips scheduled and I canceled them when I was younger because stuff at work came up. And I don't really feel like I missed anything, to be really honest with you.
We have a lot of commonality because we go to Cabo all the time. So I love going there.
Why do you love to go? Because you can get there in a couple hours
Yeah,
from where we live.
it's the easiest freaking trip ever.
Exactly.
It was the only place open during COVID. It was great.
Yep.
So I went to Cabo. I go to Cabo a few times a year.
Me too.
And, you know, I'm going there because I like sitting on the beach for a few days.
Yes.
I like the service, the food, the
too.
weather. Everything's great. But I've never been to Europe because like I don't want to walk the streets and like, I don't know, see history.
I don't care.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I'm not a sightseer.
Yeah.
I'm not, God, I'm going to get a lot of hate on. I just don't care. Like I don't want to fly 12 or 15 hours when
Yeah.
I can just fly. Like I'm doing a speaking tour in, I think it's Dubai in October. Number one thing, I'm like, oh, the flight over.
Yeah.
You know, and then I'm going there. It's a good example. My team's playing in the tub. They're like, well, you talk on this day. And I'm like, okay, so it's a day change. I go, get me in there, get me to do the talk. They're like, no, it's like 20 hours of flying. I go, I don't care. I don't want to see it. I want to get back. I live on vacation.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing I would say to someone who's relating to what I'm saying or wonders, I've built homes where I want to actually vacation and live.
Yeah.
So my vacation is 5 o'clock tonight. When you're gone, I'll be smoking a cigar out there on my balcony with a nice 1942 in the glass. And I'm on damn vacation.
Yeah.
I live oceanfront, man. I got an island. I don't need to go to your version of vacation. And sometimes I go to Cabo. Even Cabo, I'm like, I just left there. It's right there.
Yeah.
That's Cabo. It's a little warmer. Like what's better there is like the food's better. Like the service
It's just
is better.
different. That's
And
it.
you should change your place so it recharges you to get back. And I don't want to steal the dream from people that want to be like travel the world. I don't even like packing when I travel. Like my stuff's in my closet, man. I just go grab my shorts and go down to the beach. Like, so I actually did this early on. I went to a seminar, a guy spoke. I'll never forget this. And he's like, I live on vacation. I go, that's the version I want. I don't be packing bags. Here's the other thing, like no one's going to relate to this, but like I'm introverted. I like it quiet. I don't even like hotels.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I don't like the noise other people make. I like being in my damn house. I worked real hard to get this house here and to get the other houses. So like something in my body goes, let's get back and accomplish something. Let's expand. Let's do something. I almost feel like I'm wasting away when I'm on vacation. Yeah. Maybe that'll change when I'm 70. I don't know. But like I thought by the time I was 50, I'll be like, this will be out of my system. It's just not. I don't love all the work.
Yeah.
I love meeting the next version of me. I love more self-discovery. I love expanding my being. Like I'm addicted to that. I'm not a big drinker. I probably smoke too many cigars, but like I'm addicted to the expansion of me.
Yeah.
Of my soul, of my spirit, of my being, of trying to understand myself and God and life and human beings better and make a bigger impact. And, you know, like that's my addiction.
Yeah. No, I've never heard that. I like to live on vacation. Like that's.
Yeah, I do. I live on vacation.
And you see that, like, I don't have, $30 million plus house
You're
on the beach.
well on your way. You're ahead of where I was. Yeah.
Well, with me, even at the current stage, a house that's 10% of this, right?
I'm sure it's more than that.
I don't like to go leave that because we have everything. Like it's a great house.
Yes.
And so if I'm going to go stay at a hotel, I'm like, this has to be an upgrade.
Correct.
Over what I have over here. Because why would I go?
Yes.
So that's basically your point.
One thing that's changed me the last 5 years, I have become a little bit snooty in like when I travel, where I stay. So it used to be like, I tell my staff, get me a good deal on something.
Yeah.
Even when I was rich, I was like, give me a good deal.
Yeah.
And then a couple of those deals weren't really good deals, once I got there. So now when I do travel, I go, what's the best place?
Yeah.
And I want to stay at the best place with the best service.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And I've learned to value service as like my experiences have grown. Because before, I mean, look, I grew up poor as a minor league baseball player. So like even eating Chipotle was like a sacrifice.
Yes.
Like, dude, man, I either make rice and chicken and
Yes.
it costs me $2, or I eat Chipotle, it's 5 times. That was the decision.
Top ramen days too.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, I remember the moment I didn't have to worry about paying for Chipotle anymore. It was like, wow, this is crazy. And then you start to, try new things. And then we started going out to dinner for $100. And you're like, wow, this is crazy.
Yes.
Then you go to a $500 dinner with your wife and you're like, dude, I understand why people pay so much for this. It's not that the food is just so much it's the service, it's the ambiance, it's all of those things.
Bro, it's so funny that you say this. I've never said this in any interview. You're a good interviewer. I still have these moments like, I bought the island or whatever, right? You go, did that wow you? Yeah, it did. But let me tell you, like, I still have these flashes where, like, I'll be at dinner with my family. The bill's $280 or whatever. And I'm like, I'm paying for this and I'm not worrying about it. Like, those things I used to worry about so much, or like, it's amazing to me how, not simple, that's more than simple, but like, those things still give me great pride and joy compared to like even the big things. Cause I went so long as an entrepreneur. I can tell you how I lived, man. I had to rent an office and I was looking for a new office when I had my financial company. And I found this office building that was on the roof above a Taco Bell. And the reason I rented this building, I signed a 3-year lease, is I figured out I go down there and eat Taco Bell every day, and I can refill this Mountain Dew cup here every day and not pay for a new soda. That's literally how my stupid brain thinks. So I tell you, I'm risk adverse, but like I literally kept my office for 3 years because I could go get 59-cent bean burritos every single day. It wasn't good for my fitness back in the day.
Yeah.
But anything I could do to conserve or save money or pump more back into my business. And so now when I do go to Mastro's for dinner, it's not the best place in the world, but it's good. I'm like, I'm taking my family to dinner, and I'm not worried about this bill. This is a great feeling. That stuff is what made all the long nights, all the rejection, all the drives, all the dark houses where people no-showed, all the clients who changed their mind, all the critics. You'd be surprised at what made it worth it. This makes it worth it, but more stuff like that makes it worth it to me. Like my kids went to private school, man. I was able to educate my kids the way I wanted to. That made it worth it. I took those arrows so my kids could go to a safe school where there's a security guard in the front and they don't have to worry about, like, that stuff is, here's the biggest thing about making your dreams come true. And I've just stumbled into this lately. I've been talking about it more because I've had the blessing of this happening. You have these dreams you want to make happen, live on the ocean or pay off your mom's house or whatever it might be that's your dream, or start your foundation, buy your Lambo, whatever your thing is. That is cool. And when you make your dreams come true, it blows your mind. What no one tells you about busting your ass and making your dreams come true is all of the dreams of the people you love that you will make come true, that you don't even know they have and that they don't even know they have. I'll give you a perfect example. I worked really hard many years when I didn't have kids. Little did I know when I was working till midnight, get up at 4 the next morning or whatever I had to go through, I was actually someday making the dreams come true of children that weren't even born yet. Same with you, man. When you've been most of your sacrifice, a lot of it happened before these babies were even born.
Yep.
The coolest thing about getting wealthy and making your dreams come true isn't what you think it is. It's the dreams you will make a reality for the people that you love in your life, some of which aren't even born yet, that you don't even know they have. That's the secret part of becoming somebody in your life that no one tells you. You can go to any summer and go, man, it's so good to buy a Lambo. It's so cool to have a jet. It's great to do. What they never tell you is there'll be literally millions of micro dreams of the people that you love. Some of you right now that are watching this or listening to this are working your ass off to make the dreams come true of somebody you have not even met yet in your life and may not meet for another decade. Yet you will do things for them because of what you're doing right now that you can't even imagine. That's the biggest part.
For me, I was never a big material guy. Like I just started buying watches 2 years ago, like I flew first class for the first time 2 years ago.
Okay.
And so I never cared about it.
Yep.
And the more that I've just gone through life and, bought nice things, you're like, the watch was cool, but it's gone. After you buy it, you're like, all right, whatever. The experiences is really what matters. And so, I was talking to actually my team on the drive up here. It's like, man, this drive up here is an experience, like what we're doing. We were talking about my daughter had 2 crazy parties, just like over the top. That she's 2-3 years old. She's not ever going to remember this. And I was like, it's not even about her or that. It's about the other kids who will never get to experience something that crazy.
Can I tell you one thing about your kids, though? I'm going to give you some insight on this. Her soul remembers it, and her emotional imprinting remembers it. So when you're giving your kids, when they're really young like this, these blessings of these incredible experiences, although they won't remember the actual experience when they're 25 years old, there's an emotional imprinting that creates patterns where she'll go back and pursue those same emotions of joy and beauty and bliss in her life unknowingly. When a child is raised without those experiences and without those things, with trauma or stress, they seek those out as they get older. So these things you do for your kids, they don't have to be pool parties or money, but these emotional things that our children feel when they're young, they go seek those as patterns when they get older. So for me, when I was young, because my dad was a drinker, my emotional pattern was to worry, was to be afraid, was to be scared, was to even be angry. And so as I became an older man, even though conditions of my life changed, my emotional imprinting didn't change. I still was worried. I was still scared. I was still angry. So these things you do, those of you listening to this for your children, now that they're young, they may not remember them, but you're creating emotional imprinting where they will pursue those patterns and those experiences and those people in their lives that deliver them for them, as opposed to the ones that harm them and hurt them.
How does somebody break free of that? Because so many people are listening. They had no control over that.
Yes.
It's how they were raised.
Yep.
And, you know, you got the majority of the world who's like, well, my circumstance sucked.
Yes.
There's nothing I can do.
Yep.
And then you have people who overcome it. How do they do it?
First is being aware of it. That's why it's so important they listen to what I just said. You just go, that explains me.
Yeah.
That explains me. I got it. Okay, so there's some imprinting that was done. So the first is when there's an emotion or a thought and you become aware of it, it loses most of its power over you. So like for me, like I love to create chaos in my life. No matter what's going on, I got to mix in some chaos. And I used to say to people, man, I'm so good under stress and chaos. But what started to happen was I'd produce it unnecessarily. And I'm like, why the hell do I do this? Because I grew up in so much of it. And so once I was aware of it, now when I start to do it, I go, I'm doing this stupid shit again.
You're just
Here
now,
I go.
You're aware every
Here
time.
I go. So
Yep.
the one is the awareness. And then two is like beginning to live consciously. Don't be someone who just lives unconsciously, where you just respond and react all of your life. Live as a conscious human being. Choose. How would I like to live? What emotions do I want to experience? Begin to pursue them intentionally. There's a massive power in your life of just intentional pursuit of something, intentional pursuit of a goal, intentional pursuit of an outcome, intentional pursuit of a business, and also intentional pursuit of our emotions. What do? We set up goals every year. You teach it, I teach it. What are the things you want to get done? I want the jet. I want 100 grand saved. I want to make 2 million. I want to scale my business by 20%. I want to get to 8% body fat. Whatever these things are, we write up down every year. Do you really want those things, or do you want how they will make you feel? 8% body fat, I'd be shredded. How would I feel, right? Dream relationship, how would I feel? 100 grand in the bank, $1 million in the bank, whatever it is, how would I feel? So although those are important things, how come we never get intentional about the actual feeling? What if you worked on both at the same time? Because what I've found out is I've pursued the feelings and the emotions. It's been easier to produce the material things. Instead of, I did it the hard way before. I'm going to get all the stuff and then I'll feel better. What I started to do as I got a little bit older is I want all the stuff and the things and the accomplishments and the accumulations, but I also want the feeling. So I'm going to intentionally pursue both of them. Now you're a pretty powerful human being.
Right.
You're aware over your crap. You pursue the emotions you want on a daily basis, because we get what we most obsess over in our lives. So if they become your obsessive thoughts, you begin to get them. And I found this, man. I'm going through a relatively stressful time right now. It's sort of tripping me out a little bit. I'm actually pretty blissful right now. I've actually had a great deal of peace through this season of my life. Kind of surprising myself right now. Normally, the normal me, I don't even find peace when it's good.
Yeah.
I don't even find peace when I'm making millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And I'm finding peace during a trying time. Ooh, this is pretty, maybe I've grown a little bit here. Maybe this stuff I teach actually works, right? Maybe it works. And so I would just tell you to become more intentional about what you want to feel and not just what you want to accumulate. Do both.
Yeah. And this is also, you know, for me, one of the big reasons why I wanted to have you come speak at WealthCon.
Thank you.
Because you bring to the table this emotional, psychological, all these things that a lot of people don't talk about, right? Like I'll come up on stage and I'll teach tactical things that I think people could do because I think very logically.
Yeah, you do.
And to see guys like you explain why we do what we do, I'm like, dude, we got to get Ed.
Thank you. I'm
You know,
excited to be
first off, I just want to say I'm appreciative that you're coming to speak. And
Can I tell you why I'm coming?
Yeah.
It's you. So I've been blessed, man. The last 10 years, I have an agent, but they don't book my speaking. I'm word of mouth speaking. And I'm fortunate. I get hundreds of requests a year, and I do about 80. And now I'm pretty scrutinizing about who I vet. And one of the things I try to do is I want to show up in places where I think, here's how I term it to my team. Find me people who's a stock I would buy if they were a stock. So, and in your case, I've watched your stuff over time. I've watched how you've handled it. I've actually watched how you've grown on camera too. And if you were a stock, I'd buy you because I think you're rising. And so if I can come and sprinkle a little whatever on that and what you're doing in your community, what you're doing here on the show, I want to be able to do that because I didn't get into this space. It's happened, but I didn't mean it to. I'm not the king. I don't mean it that way, but like I didn't get in this space to be the king.
Yeah.
Or I wanted to be the king and queen maker. I wanted to build a platform big enough that I could say, this person's awesome too. This person, listen to this person. Almost create a space where I could elevate other people. And that's what I do on my podcast, is I'm real careful of who sits in that seat because I know they're going to get millions of eyeballs and ears on them. And so when I come to speak somewhere, man, like you were the main reason that I decided to do it. And I've also just heard such good things about you from our mutual friends. And then today off camera, some personal stuff you shared with me. I'm like, this is one of my dudes now.
I appreciate that.
It's true.
Yeah, no, I really do. For anyone who wants to come, it's October 3rd to the 6th in Vegas. You can go to wealthcon.org and get your tickets. Actually, too, one thing that I'm also really appreciative you're doing is the dinner that we're going to have with, I think, 10 people only.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool because when you go speak to these big crowds, you know, you always leave there wishing you could have connected more personally and intimately with a small group where they can ask you things and feel your spirit, and you don't just get sound bites, but you're in this.
Yep.
And so that'll be what that dinner will be, you know, affording certain people to have and for me to have. I learn a lot of these things too, man. When I go, I get fed as much as I feed people at these events. There's always an experience I have that I cherish, or I get a letter afterwards, or a conversation I have.
I want to ask you an entrepreneur question though.
Yeah.
Earlier, you described collision shop, real estate, infomercial. You had these different things going on. Would you recommend that to an entrepreneur who's listening to this now, or do you believe they should be immersed in one area? Would you, or do you think it doesn't matter?
No, I think we live in a shallow world. I think shallow meaning we're especially a new generation who grew up going through a stream, right? So what used to be hours went to minutes, and now it's seconds, right? If something doesn't catch you in a second, and I feel like a lot of people want that next level, which is great. Everybody should, but we dabble in each one, and we don't see enough spark, excitement, or light, so we back out and go to the next one. It's like they're looking for the magic money machine, and they're in one car, and they're like, this car might work. Oh, that car looks good. And then we jump out in the next one, and we jump out in the next one. So I would say, even though, you know, I'm 50 this year, so I've had like different lives, I went deep on all of them. My collision shop was the best in town. That's why I landed Enterprise and Hertz rental car. And so I'm going to give you mind if I give 3 lessons?
Give it, please.
Maybe 2 or 3. I just said 3, but it's 2 or 3 I'm thinking in my head. One is, no matter what you're doing, even if you hate it, realize it's temporary and be amazing at it. I sat down with John Paul DiGiorio, who started Tequila, Patron and Sassoon, and he said he hated.
His name's come to me a couple times this week. Go ahead.
Yeah, he said he hated when he had a janitorial job when he was a kid. But he said, man, it was my job. I cleaned the boss came to him and said, man, I lifted up the desk. You cleaned under the desk. He's like, the guy thought I loved the job. I hated it. I just did it the best. And I realized one of my first real estate deal did over $1 million. True story. I was fixing a guy's car, and I'm in the collision shop. I'm going to be completely transparent. I hated the collision shop. I ended up being the only painter because I got good at it. So every night when everybody left, I'd paint for 3 hours. The ventilation wasn't good. I'd have headaches. I hated every inch of it, but you'd never know. If you came in, you'd be like, that guy loves being in the collision shop. I knew it was temporary. Because don't think I'm just going to schlub through this job and then my magic will come. You'll be screwed. You'll stay there because how you do one thing is how you do everything. So I'm literally in the collision shop. I have this guy. He comes down. He's like, my God, my car looks great. Thank you so much. We get talking. Become kind of friends really quick. And he says, what are you up to? I'm like, well, I'm doing this, but I'm working on my day job. My night job is real estate. I'm gonna take real estate to a whole nother level. He's like, what do you got going on? At that time, I was working on a deal for $180,000 to buy an old vineyard. Okay. And I didn't have the money. I scraped up every credit card I had. I came up with like 45 grand. The seller agreed to sell it to me for half down and half in 2 years. I needed 45 grand. I tell this guy the story. I said, but I'm gonna get it. He goes, yeah, you're gonna get it because I'm going home to get it for you.
Oh my gosh.
Now, what if I was like, oh, I hate collision. Yeah, here's your keys.
Yeah.
made $1 million on that deal. It was the first one ever, documented.
Awesome.
I sold that property. I killed it on that property. Killed it.
What a great
all the
story.
All the neighbors didn't want me to build on the property, and I was fighting them. And then I realized, wow, what if I sell it to them? So I sold them all a piece around, and I crushed it. I killed it.
story.
So that's the first thing.
Yep.
So no matter what you're doing, find a way to be enthusiastic, knowing that maybe the universe, God, whatever you believe in, is putting you through your trial run to deserve that. And then the next thing, I love this phrase. I've been saying it for about 6 months: success tax.
Yeah, I heard you say it earlier.
You know what I
Yeah.
love about that? Somebody told to me, I didn't make it up, but I found my own version of it. It's like we all want to make more money. We all want to feel significance, abundance, freedom. But most people aren't willing to pay it. So a great analogy I've been using is if you're in a band and you play the guitar and you write songs. It would be amazing to be at Madison Square Garden, 50,000 people singing your song, you're out in the front of the stage. I mean, could anything be more euphoric, right? But everybody would want that. But who's willing to play the guitar when no one's watching till your hands hurt? Who's willing to pack up an old shitty van that barely runs and drive to dive bar after dive bar playing where people are booing you? Most people aren't willing to put in the success tax to pay. And I said, what if you just visualized, whether you believe in God, whatever you believe in, that there's an auditor, a success auditor. And you go, okay, Ed started with shit, lives in a ghetto. Okay, but he's still positive every day. Wow, he's still respectful. Wow, he tried that first business and his first partner screwed him over, took all the money and left. Wow, he still got up the next day, still inspiring other people, still not a jerk. Check. What if you got to check off 10 boxes before you get to the other side? Because once you get to the other side, it opens up like Ed's amazing backyard. There's not many people playing at that level. Like everybody thinks it's so competitive up here. It's not, because you guys are all fighting over crumbs, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, but all I'm saying is when you said, like, put in the success tax and know you're going to fail, know it's going to go sideways, but it's worth it. And those two things combined, love what you do and put in the success tax, and then all of a sudden, because I've been framing it more than ever, the success tax, when shit goes sideways, I'm like, man, I just checked another box. I just checked another box, and all of a sudden I found a way to be enthusiastic.
Bro, that is a couple of my favorite things I've ever heard, honestly. That's one of my couple things that, for me, and for me even, because I'm at that place too, you know, like,
what's next?
You know, and I'm checking some boxes right now.
Yeah.
I'm checking some boxes. Man, that's so good. You talk a little bit about, there's this great story you have. This is so good for people, by the way, and thank you for being so generous.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure.
Part of that success tax, though, is you said something earlier about playing at this high level, and I've heard you say this, and I didn't learn this till too late, not too late. I learned it later in life, and that is that my max out strategy, but you might as well play big. Because you say something so powerful about this, elaborate on this. The stress level's kind of the same when you're playing for something small or if you're going for something big. People think, man, I don't want to go for the big old thing because the stress, it's actually the same stress.
No,
so would you elaborate on that? I love how you say it.
No, it's like if you want more success, get bigger problems.
It's
like,
so true.
As simple as that sounds, you're like, oh, Dean, that was so enlightening. No, it is. Because this is simple, the lowest form. Like, I've just started realizing I want bigger problems because I remember the stress of my first real estate deal where I made probably $5,000, right? Worked my ass off, was stressing, worried. The town didn't want to give me a permit, then the seller was falling through and I was running out of money. It was so stressful. And then I remember, you know, a couple months ago, I signed an $18 million deal. And there was the same exact amount of stress. It doesn't matter. And again, I say that I said I judge myself. I don't ever want to come across pretentious or saying, oh, look at me with my $18 million deal. I don't mean that. I just want you to know that the stress you feel to pay your bills or get ahead or work, it's the same stress whether you're making 10, 100, 10 million or 100 million a year. It feels the same. So if it feels the same, then why not avoid lower end problems so you can spend time solving bigger ones? I mean, I'm in a phase of my life. I'm not shitting you. If I order medium rare steak at a restaurant and they bring me well done chicken, I just eat it.
So do I.
Who gives a shit?
So do I. I'm the same way. It's
like somebody cuts me off in traffic and then flips me off. I'm like, wow, they need bigger problems. Traffic is bugging you that much, you'll never be successful. So know that. If you're annoyed because a friend doesn't ask you to go to the mall, or someone cut you off in traffic, or you think a friend offended you, or you think a coworker's being a little rude, then you're screwed because you're worrying about the wrong things. Spend that energy on solving big problems and you accomplish big things.
This is massively incredibly valuable for people to hear, because it's like there's someone listening right now, they're running a gym. You know, the same stress level will be when you have 20 of them. If you can scale it, you should. If you're buying 2-unit buildings, you should be doing that. But if you can buy 20s, the stress level is going to be the same. This is an absolute fact. I've learned it in business. My stress level when I had 10 agents in my agency compared to having 30 or 40,000 is the same. It's just stress. It's better to be going bigger. And you have to sell a big enough dream in your business that the dreams of everybody associated with you can fit inside the one you're selling. You entrepreneurs, you fathers, you mothers, sell a big dream so that everyone's dreams associated, vendors, clients, recruits, agents, employees,
absolutely,
can fit inside that sucker. And what you're talking about, these big problems, tell them the story. This is so profound. I want you to illustrate this point one more time.
Yeah.
Tell them the story about you're paying the guy to cut your grass and your dad sees you.
Oh, wow, that's funny. You did do your research.
Of
cool
course.
stuff, man.
Yeah.
So my first apartment house, it was an old rundown mansion.
Massive lesson here, everybody.
Yeah, it was an old rundown apartment house, a mansion, like, I mean, beat up, old big house. And I ended up getting the house for no money down, and I converted it into 10 apartments. So what was cool is I'd fix one up. I was living in it while I fixed it. And then as soon as it was done, I'd rent it and I'd move in one not done. But I got through all 10 of them.
Crazy.
So now I have this 10-unit apartment house. It's doing great for me. I'm 19, 20 years old. You know, it's bringing me in $5,000 a month net, which was a gazillion dollars, because now I'm living for free.
Yeah.
And and plus it's building value. So I got no money down, refinanced it, pulled some cash out. I used that money to go into the next one. Long story short, had a huge lawn. So every Saturday, because my dad was born during the Depression, my dad grew up with, if you could do it yourself, you don't pay anybody, right? So every Saturday I'd spend 5 hours. I had a massive lawn. I'd mow. I have allergies, so my eyes are tearing. I'm weed whacking. You know, shit hits your legs, and it's just. Yep. And then one day I realized, wow, I'm mowing my lawn a whole day. I hired the kid down the street for $50 to mow my lawn, and he's mowing the lawn. My dad pulls in. True story, zero exaggeration. I tell it to my dad all the time. He's like, sorry, I was wrong. My dad pulls in, he goes, and this is how my dad talks to me, whether you think it's true or not. He goes, Mr. Big Shot, you finally went too far. You're so freaking big now that you're gonna pay someone to mow your lawn when you can do it. And he got so mad that he left and he hit the gas, and it was gravel driveway, and he dented the shit out of the side of my car. It was just like, dunk, 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 dunk. And I'm like, and he left, and maybe he gave me the finger when he was leaving or something like that. That's my dad, he's got an Italian hothead, right? And he left, and it was so profound that I knew at that moment I was onto something. I really did. I'd love to say it was this epiphany and the sky opened up, but I was like, wow, my dad still struggles. And what I realized, and this is what I want to share with you, is I realized an ROI on my time. At that time, I had 15 apartments. I had 2 houses being built. I had a collision shop and a used car dealership. If I went down to the used car dealership and sold one car, I probably netted about $2,000 a car back then. I sold lower end cars. So in that day, without mowing the lawn, if I sold one car, it cost me $50 to mow the lawn. I made $2,000. Or if I drove around that day and found my next apartment house, could be tens of thousands of dollars. And it just hit me. It was so profound at that moment that I'm going to start equating things I do with an ROI. Yes. It's like if and the great part is if you keep noodling it, it doesn't matter if something costs you $500 an hour. If you're working in your unique ability, you can make $10,000 an hour, still pay someone to do it. And you just chip away like an onion, peeling back an onion to stop doing the stuff that doesn't move the needle. And something I just always love saying is, because it really affected me when I was young, stop trying to get good at the things you suck at too. I need to say that because it's the biggest lie we've ever been told. It dings our confidence when I still can't read. If I wrote you 2 sentences in an email, half the words would light up misspelled, and some of them are so bad that I tried 3 different times to spell it, and the computer can't even, like, if it could talk to me, it'd be like, idiot. Like, what are you trying to say? I have no freaking clue what you're saying. And then I just put, like, good. You know? Like,
yes, I completely relate to that.
But what it does is, let me just ask you, watching or listening right now, if you work on something you suck at, does it make you feel empowered? Does it make you feel like you want to, like me trying to do accounting? Like, could never do it. It's not my personality. So, what I know about the most successful people on the planet, including you, Ed, you just got really great at a few things.
Correct.
The things that light you up, the things that inspire you, and when that fire starts, you can't stop it, and eventually you'll pay someone to do the things you suck at. Maybe you can't afford that now, but just don't let anybody give you a bill of goods on working on the things. Try to get better at what you're failing. No, just go get great at a few things.
Yeah, I wish I could debate you on that, but I can't because I 100% agree. I just know that that's true. I'm not great at so many things. By the way, one of them being writing. there are 5 or 6 things I've gotten really pretty good at in my life, right? And I just work those skills over and over and over again. And I collaborate or surround myself with people who are good at the stuff I'm not good at.
Yeah.
I can't shoot this stuff these guys are filming.
Absolutely.
I don't know how to edit the stuff they're doing. These guys are brilliant, right?
Yeah.
It's not my area. And this is such great juice for people in every area. And also the other thing Dean recommends is make a list of the stuff you do suck at and make a list of the stuff that you are doing that you don't need to be doing. I'm so obsessed with that. There's sometimes I'm even reading emails. I'm like, I should not be the one even reading this email right now because this is stuff for my personal ROI. Okay, so a couple other things I want to ask you about.
Yeah.
Because it's just simple what you do, but I love the way you teach it because I'm massive on it's in my book. But yours is special and unique. Everyone needs to find a routine that works for them.
Yep.
And I like simple things. Sometimes people give me these 19 steps, and I'm like, you don't really do that.
No,
in the real world, you
don't
do these things. They sounded really good in your book, or it was a hell of a speech. And everyone who knows you don't do these things. You've done you've done each of them once of the 19.
It's so funny.
Right.
I have 3 of my dear friends that are massive influencers that do that, and every time I'm like, "You're so full of shit."
No one does all that stuff.
I've hung out with you. I didn't see you do any of those.
So true,
You got up and pounded coffee.
So true. I just think it's the most hilarious thing. So
that's awesome.
It's so true, by the way. Your morning routine, in terms of gratitude, I could do, and it works. Mine's about 5 minutes longer than yours, but I love what you do, and I love how you talk about reducing it. So just share with them what you do. This is awesome. You guys, you're going to love this.
And I fail on this sometimes too. If I don't do it, I honestly screw it up.
Yeah.
But it's a consistent thing because I can do it in 5 to 7 minutes.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I used to, which probably a lot of people listening, and this isn't revolutionary. And the one thing I want to say, thank you for saying, I try to make things simple. And the one thing I'd love to say is, there's probably not much I'm sharing today you haven't heard before. You've read it in books, you've heard it someplace, you've watched a video or a podcast, but what I'm going to ask you to do for the first time is actually listen and apply it. And that's been my mission lately, is like, I know there's some of the things, success principles are the same since the beginning of time. But when is it time to stop being inspired, stop just watching Ed, and start just doing what Ed does? Like, when is that time to stop looking for the next hit of a great podcast, the next hit of watching Tony or Dean or Ed or Andy or somebody watching, feeling good, and then going back to the same routine? What if this was the time? What if this was the interview? What if this was the moment you said, I'm not just going to listen, I'm going to start to do? And I didn't mean to get sidetracked on that, but it's really different.
No, it is, and like that's why I like what you do in the morning, because like when I heard it, I went, that I can do.
Yeah, so I'll
can
go
do
really
that.
quick. So for me, if I wake up and look at my phone, it's like Russian roulette. A deal I'm working on, if it's not going through, I'll get pissed, I'll get in my head. And for me, I just try to find ways to frame things in my life. For me, I kick ass during the day if I'm playing offense. If I'm playing defense, putting out fires, I don't move forward. I manage stuff. I didn't move the needle. So I want to play offense every day. So I framed it in my head. This is my way for offense. So when I wake up, I do not look at my phone. If I do, it's Russian roulette. It could be shitty. So first thing, I don't look at my phone. Second thing, I just find something to be grateful for. But if you've ever done a gratitude journal and you know you're 3 months in, you're like, I got nothing left. I said my daughter 27 times, my son 42. Like, you run out of stuff. So for me, I just want to be grateful for the little things. Like, I wake up and the sheets feel good. I'm like, wow, the sheets feel good. Or 150,000 people die a day. You didn't die. I'm grateful just sitting here with you right now. The littlest thing, only so it frames your mind in a gratitude space. I'm not talking about a long meditation. I don't have time for that. Maybe you do, and that'd be great. But I just think of something in that moment to be grateful for. And then in the next moment, I just think of one win from the day before. Because listen, as entrepreneurs, if you're watching this, you want another level of life, you kick your own ass more than anybody could. You work a 16-hour day and you come home and you're like, I got nothing done today. You lie to yourself. You beat yourself up. So it's a moment to go, no, yesterday I closed that deal. Yesterday I got to meet Ed and I know he'll be a friend for life. Like, just one thing. That's it. Seconds. Gratitude. One thing was a win yesterday. Then I think of one win for that day. What's one thing I want to accomplish? If I do that little tiny thing, it puts my mind in offense and I'm in a different space.
Man, I want to second 2 things here because this is so real and so good. Because by the way, most of you lose control of your life in the first 5 minutes after you wake up. I talk about it in my book, and you begin to respond all day long. The first thing is this. The hardest thing you will do, and the thing that will change your life almost with the greatest impact, is to not check your phone for the first 30 minutes you wake up in the morning. I'm telling you that
might be the biggest game changer.
It is the biggest game changer for me. It was so difficult because, so what I did is I moved it away from where I sleep, But I'm just going to say to you all, you think that's not a big deal, I got to check it. I'm telling you, if you could go 30 minutes, if you could start by going 10 minutes to begin your day, something where you do not check that sucker and react. And then what you say about the gratitude thing, that's profound for me, and it's a breakthrough for me when you said it. I'm always kind of like, what are the big things I'm grateful for? God, I'm grateful for my kids. You reduce it down to just something. What's the smallest thing you could be grateful for, right? I love that, because there's always a small thing you could be grateful for. You know, I'm grateful I clipped my toenails yesterday, whatever it is, right? There's something. So I just want to validate how powerful I think both those simple tools, the simplest things, make the biggest impacts in our lives. Okay, a couple more things.
Yeah.
I want to ask you some personal stuff for a minute.
You got it.
You talk a lot about protecting your confidence. I'm a huge believer that like momentum and confidence is like this invisible force that we wish as influencers we could explain to people.
Yeah.
And it's just something you need to end up possessing. I think you get confidence by keeping the promises you make to yourself. That's one of my theories.
Great theory.
So I want you to describe that, but I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share, even recently, the last 4 or 5 years, was there an incident where your confidence was rocked?
Yep.
And so the importance of protecting it, and if you'd share a personal example, maybe you haven't shared before.
It's a great question, Ted. I'm really enjoying this, man. It's
So
fun being here. And you have an amazing audience. You guys rock.
Thank you.
So for me, confidence is, I just look at things again in the simplest form. I've never done anything good in my life when my confidence was down. I never got the girl when I was young. I never closed the deal. I didn't get the money I wanted. I didn't get the partnership. And not like your confidence is in the toilet and you're pathetic with your shoulders down. I'm talking when your confidence is 5% off.
Yeah.
Did you ever go into a meeting and you know you're a little off and you're like, I'm just gonna grit my way through it, and you come out, you're like, damn, I should have just either ignored it or took a moment to build my confidence because I didn't get what I wanted. And I've just been obsessing on knowing that my confidence needs to be high at all times. So there's a million different ways to go. I love what Ed said on how to build confidence, keeping the promises you make with yourself. Incredible. One of the things I do is I really obsess on looking at the things that take my confidence. So for me, as simple as this sounds, is I haven't watched the news in 10 years. I don't watch it all. Because I've never watched the news and got down and go, wow, whew, I feel amazing.
Right.
Like, you don't watch the news and go, Ed, hey man, I watched the news this morning. Dude, you should catch it at 12.
You're not going to believe it.
You're not going to believe how amazing shit is. No, you watch the news, you're like, oh my God, right? So the news, I know this sounds crazy and we know this is simple, but I've really eliminated the people in my life, and you've heard this a million times, that rob my confidence. And I've either become, if they're family members, I put the Teflon up, or I've slowly pushed them out of my life. And any exercise, anything that I do that robs my confidence, the people I surround myself, exercises, like I said, don't work on your weaknesses. I've obsessed on not to do lists. So if I go, hey, when I do X, Y, Z, it robs my confidence, I don't like it, I know it's got to go out of my life. Like my threshold, confidence builder, confidence detractor. If it's a detractor, it goes on the thing that's got to go away. So I would just encourage you, think about the things, the people, the events you do, going to happy hour with the guys from work and all they do is complain about how shitty your job or your boss is or your company is. If that makes you feel bad about yourself, then they're robbing you of your bigger future. So I would say one of the things besides what Ed said is make a list of the things that ding your confidence just a little bit and either reframe them or eliminate them.
Wow, very good.
And I'll tell you a thing. As entrepreneurs, it's great when you see when someone does a post, an entrepreneur, it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. Oh, life sucks. I'm gonna go broke. I'm losing everything. I should have never tried. Oh no, wait, I found it. Things are good. This is really good. I'm the greatest. I can't make a mistake. Oh my God, I screwed up again.
So
right? That's the life of an entrepreneur. But I would choose it 1,000,000 times over, even with the failures. But I have to tell you, so real estate education. Right? So real estate was my life. That's what made me a millionaire in my 20s. I wrote a book, Be a Real Estate Millionaire. That book alone broke 1 million copies. And I wrote that book and launched it in 2007 when the market was crashing. Everybody was doing it the same way. I taught people on the way down, don't fix and flip, don't buy and hold. We don't know where the bottom is. Wholesale on the way down. So I taught a wholesale strategy. The book went on fire. I don't know if any other real estate book has ever sold 1 million copies, but we sold 1 million of that one. On that way down, we built a company. We probably went from 2007 to 2000, maybe 12. In that downturn, when all my competitors, literally, they were all gone. By the time we hit the bottom, they were gone. And we were a $100 million a year company and making a massive impact. And I was working hard to get more influence and all those things, right? So the company's growing while everybody else is going down. So anyway, long story short, I became the #1 real estate educator on the planet. No one has ever touched as many lives as we can. And I've held that title for a long time, but about 4 years ago, we were also in the live event space doing amazing 60, 70 live events a week. I wanted to go deeper because so many of my students, you can give somebody a business on how to sell $20 bills for $10 and they'll still screw it up. They'll find a way to find an obstacle. They'll find a way to tell them that my parents said this is a scam, or nobody's going to want to buy a $20 bill for $10. Or, like, they'll screw it up, right? So I became so obsessed with it, and my deep relationship with Tony and the impact he has on people and his encouragement, I'm like, I want to go into the successful. I want to go upstream. So my whole philosophy was, I can provide you with the way to make money, but if I don't go upstream and provide you with the right habits, you're going to think I'm a loser and my shit doesn't work, and I don't like that. I don't want you sitting in Starbucks in 5 years going, I bought that Dean course. You can't make money in real estate. It's like, no, you can't make money in anything because you don't have the right habits. So I got obsessed with this, and I started scaling down the real estate business and going into the success space. Wrote Millionaire Success Habits and just got obsessed on it. And I have to tell you, from going with in 2013, my brands and my company, we did over $200 million in sales. To kind of wind that down and start fresh, I wanted to leapfrog with doing $200 million a year in success habits. And we took a dip. And of course, fortunately, I do well, so I didn't let anybody go. And I told the whole team, we're going to ride. I've been here. I'm purposely riding this down so we can come back out. But I have to tell you, I was about a year in. I wrote the book. We first launched it. And a lot of people are confused. Like, you're the real estate guy or the success guy. It's like, no, you have to be the success guy to be that big in real estate, right? You know this. And I have to tell you, about a year and a half in, I wasn't getting the momentum I thought I should. And I was losing my confidence. Like, wow, maybe because I'm older, maybe because I ignored social media. I did, because we were the #1 show infomercial-wise, and that was so big. I ignored social media, and I see all these people with 1 million followers. I didn't even barely start an account yet, right? And all of a sudden I start, and I got 10,000 followers. I'm like, wow, does everybody know that? Look at the impact I made. Now I'm like the little guy in town. And honestly, it dinged my confidence.
Thank you for sharing that.
And I started feeling a little insecure.
What did you do about it?
I started getting my freaking story straight. The same thing, is get my priorities straight. I said, listen, if I wanted to stay as the #1 real estate guy, is it my significance? You know what it was? It was my significance. My show ran so much, no matter where I went, people like, Dean, come in here, sit in the front, go to the front row, have this, let me buy you dinner. All of a sudden, my show was off the air for 2 years, and I'm not getting the love, and I'm like, wow. And you know what did? It made me a better man, though. Because I realized, what the hell am I doing it for? I'm doing it because I want to make at this phase of my life, I want to make an impact on the world, and I want to be a badass dad, and I want to be a good man and a good relationship. Like, that's what makes me successful now. Like, it's not the money, it's not the significance. And when I decided I didn't care anymore, oh my God, like Millionaire Success Habits, it was like a key turned. I mean, the book, we're almost at 400,000 copies, and it's on fire right now. And that brand is growing. We started Millionaire Success Habits live events. And I'm partnering with some amazing people. I have the highest level masterminds.
Where do you want them to get that book, by the way? Should they go to Amazon, or should they go to a special site?
You go to Dean's free book.
Dean's free book.
Yeah, you can get it for free. If you cover the shipping and handling, we'll send you the hardcover.
We'll put it right on the screen right now. I appreciate you sharing that, because my favorite people, and also the most successful people I know, are the most self-aware. And they're confident enough to share their vulnerabilities. And so I really appreciate you sharing that, because I went through a similar thing when I went into this space too. And also, we're both just competitive people. Even though it's still in the back, it's like, man, why aren't I getting the traction I want? You know, I know about that. And even though your needs have moved to contribution, significance is still a big need for everybody, right? It's just always. I love to say I've evolved. I'm not really a significance guy anymore. I'm here to grow and contribute, which is true, but there's an addiction to significance that's healthy as well, right?
Yeah, and I think, but what's cool is, and I see this with you, Ed, and I'm not just saying, but your significance is one thing, but that's not why you're the significance is a great byproduct.
There you go.
But your heart is to share,
correct,
and to serve.
And so is yours.
And that's why we connect in 2 minutes, and that's why sometimes you meet someone like, ooh.
Yes.
You know.
By the way, the other reason I connect with you is because you're so good at it. And I just want to validate that. Everybody watch this. I mean, we're going to talk about where you'll follow him in a minute, but his stuff is out freaking standing. I love people that get into this space, like I feel like I did, that you have, which I think is rare. Like, they spent a portion of their lives building their belief systems, their strategies, their way of doing things. They've proven it with a success. Then, so it's validated. Then they say, here's what I do. Rather than the other way around. So the reason your stuff is so good is because it comes from a space of having done something.
No,
right?
I get it.
For people that feel like they're wasting their time, they're not getting the results they want, what is one thing that they could be doing right now that would turn things around for them?
Well, actually doing one more. So, you know, we always talk, you and I both, about self-confidence, and the fact that building self-confidence is the process of keeping the promises you make to yourself. And if you lack self-confidence, you've got a relationship and reputation with yourself that's not very favorable. And so the baseline way to get self-confidence is you keep the promises you make to yourself. But in life, as you know, we don't get like our goal. We get probably 25% of our goals. But we ultimately always get our standards. Long term, you will get your standards. So the question becomes, what's the standard need to be then? And that standard needs to be, you keep the promises you make to yourself and one more. So if you're going to do 30 minutes on the treadmill every day, you don't do 30 minutes. You do the 30 minutes, you do one more. You're going to make 10 contacts in a day. You don't make 10 contacts in a day. You do the 10 contacts and you make one more. Now what happens is you start stacking up those one mores. You're going to tell Lisa you love her every day. You don't just tell her that. You tell her one more time every single day. So you start stacking up mathematically all of these one mores. You've just done more, so you're better, but you've changed the standard of your life. And you've built this superhuman type self-confidence that I not only do what I say I'm going to do, I do one more than I'm saying I'm going to do. And that's something almost nobody's willing to do. So I'm going to get things almost nobody's going to get. So that's one thing initially everybody can do.
Yeah, so you are one of the sweetest guys on planet Earth, like in real life.
Thank you.
But also in real life, you're one of the most intense guys, which I really respond to. So my journey as an entrepreneur was toughening up. I was super weak as a kid, way whiny, like definitely did not push myself. And my parents loved them to death, but they didn't know how to push me either. And so I really, when I went to college, my mom assumed I was going to fail because I was so profoundly lazy. And so hearing you in the book talk about like pushing to the extreme, like you actually use the word extreme multiple times.
I do.
And that to expand your capabilities, you have to go into the extreme. Talk to me about that, because right now I feel like that's an incredibly unpopular message.
It is.
And at the same time, it is true.
Thank you. And by the way, you talked about that on my show. So there's a part of the book where I talk about extremity expands capacity. Until you push something to the extreme, you don't really stretch your capacity to do it. And so for me, I already know, at this point in my life, we know what we're capable of at one point. So how do we change what we're capable of? And that's with extremity. That's with pushing it to the extreme. I have another chapter in the book where I call it, do one more inconvenience. This is something that if we could train ourselves to do, our entire lives would change, which is that do the inconvenient or difficult thing in your day or in your life. Human nature is to avoid that. You call it being lazy, but it's just to avoid the inconvenient. Napoleon Hill says in Think and Grow Rich, which I love, he says, on the other type of temporary pain, you are introduced to your other self, and that other self produces another life. So what we have to change, I think, to some extent, is our relationship with pain. I'm willing to pursue pain. I'm willing to pursue discomfort and do the inconvenient thing, because on the other side of that, I have extended my capacity. I've literally changed who I am by getting on the other side of that. And so for me, I am always trying to find the inconvenient thing to do, because it's not my nature either. I have to build all these habits like you do, because left to my own devices, man, I'm Netflix and pizza and Cheetos. I really would be. Like, people say to me, man, you just seem so hardcore. People think this about you as well. No, actually I'm not. And so I've had to develop these mindsets, the strategies in the book, the ways I think, my habits. There's a whole chapter on how to build habits in the book, because I'm not that way. I'm not overly disciplined, but I've learned to sort of change my relationship with pain, even in the gym, but even in a given day. For me, I chase the thing that's inconvenient because I know on the other side of that is where all the stuff lies that I want. And so that's, this old notion of, get out of your comfort zone. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about pursuing the inconvenient in a given day, because that's the pathway to your bliss. That's the pathway to your happiness. And
why is that? That's super counterintuitive.
Well, it's the pathway to your bliss and your happiness, because when we're doing things that aren't convenient on a very regular basis, there's a part of our spirit, I believe, in our soul that knows we were born to do something great, that knows we were born to grow. And when we begin to settle in our lives, it's like, I had a conversation this morning with a friend of mine who's a parent. They're having some parenting issues, and they're like, well, yeah, you grew up with an alcoholic dad, so that was child neglect. And my parents got divorced, that was child neglect. But I'm not neglecting my kids. This is just this morning, really good friend of mine. I said, I think you should rethink that. And I said, there's an insidious form of neglecting your children. And she goes, well, what is it? And I said, it's not pursuing your potential and your dreams.
Oof.
That's a form of neglect of your children. You're installing the software in them that it's okay to settle. That it's
because they're watching you.
Because they're watching you. And almost everything in life is caught, not taught. You don't teach lessons to people. They catch lessons from you. And so you're neglecting that child when you're not pursuing your potential, your bliss, or your dreams in your life. That's a form of neglect. So if it's neglecting a child when we do it, it's a form of self-neglect when we do it to ourselves. And so that's why it's counterintuitive not to do inconvenient things. But the reason it's the pathway to bliss and happiness is intuitively we know we're neglecting our spirit. We know we're neglecting our soul. We know we're neglecting our potential when we're not chasing it. And there's no way that we can simultaneously be blissful, and at the same time know that we're somehow treating ourselves less than we're worthy of?
I'm super curious. So when I hear people like you talk about this stuff, I'm going to say 99 times out of 100, there's been a physical transformation that they've gone through. Obviously, your physique is insane. I know what it would take to achieve your physique. I don't have your physique not because I don't want it, because I don't want to put that level of energy into it. I'm honest with myself about that. But I have transformed my physique.
Sure have.
And so I know what that takes. And that, I didn't think a lot about it at the time, but that coincided with me getting better at being an entrepreneur because I realized, I saw what you were saying, that as I did one more, as I pushed myself, as I did the things that were inconvenient, as I reached for the extreme, as I began to model myself after something other people said was crazy, right? Oh, that guy's too big. Oh, what are you doing? That's crazy. But I really got obsessed with it.
Yes.
And in doing that and going to the gym and pushing myself and being uncomfortable, I remember one time getting trapped under a weight and I was like, fuck, how am I gonna get out of this? And by
I've been there.
being in those situations over and over and over, you begin to realize, oh my God, like I actually change as a result of this, which then lets you believe that you can change your mind in the same way.
Yes.
How important do you think it is for people to deal with the body, to push themselves to have a transformation there?
Well, brother, I love you because we think so similarly. Catalyst for change for me all my life has been in my body. And the reason for that is it's something that I actually have some measure of control over. I can't control the external result. I can't control every time how someone's going to respond to me, what the market's doing, whatever it might be. I can control, like you and I were talking off camera, what I'm putting in here, what I'm putting in this pie hole every day. I can control my amount of hydration. I can control the training in my life. And so for me, the catalyst for change, frankly, I was 221 pounds, big and not fat. And but I knew the book was coming out and I was writing the book. And the catalyst for me to get in the most peak state I could do was to do something extreme. And so the extreme thing I did is I said, I'm gonna weigh 180 pounds in 90 days.
Whoa!
And I got down to 177. And I did that through, intermittent fasting, caloric restriction, changing my cardio, but it was an extreme.
While you were working on the book?
While I was. And the reason I did it is I knew that if I could transform the internal parts of me, that the external results I was going to produce would be that much more extraordinary. And so I'm
Just gave me the chills.
Yeah. Well, by the way, and you've done it as well. It's not like I'm going to do this every single, month of my life or even every single year of my life. But to your point, if you're sitting there and you're thinking, I can't change things. It's like, I don't have the capital. I don't have the relationships. I don't have the this or the that. You do have a body, and you can change that. There's things you can do to move it differently, treat it differently, potentially be more kind to it. One thing I'm doing, I'm 51 years old, man. I've never stretched in my life. I've never done yoga in my life. These joints and tendons are sick of me beating them up. And so one of the reasons I got a little lighter, a little smaller, a little bit less taxing on it, and I'm giving myself the gift of great stretching, great yoga. I'm doing massage now. I'm doing things to be kinder to my body as well. And this may sound really hokey and cheesy. I find myself, this is a strange thing to word it, but I find myself being a little bit more gentle with myself. When I'm so aggressive in the gym all the time, there's a transfer of that even in my life where I'm so aggressive and intense on myself, which I love that part of me. But like I've had 51 years of that. And so now I'm like, you know what? I'm being a little more kind to my body, a little bit more gentle with it. And I find myself, when I give a speech, usually I'll beat myself up. I could have done, you do the same thing. I should have done this. I should have done that. Leave a meeting, leave a podcast. Why didn't you say this? And I've just beat myself up all my life, just like I do in the gym. Recently, I find as I treat my body differently, I'm treating me differently. I'm like, that's okay, bro. You got the next one. That wasn't so bad. I'm sure you still made a difference. I've never said those words to myself in my life. Because I've always thought, if I let go of this beating myself up, that's part of my recipe, part of my formula. The truth is, I've probably been successful in spite of the way I've treated myself, not because of it.
That's interesting. I don't know that I agree. And as you're describing that, I'm so intrigued how you're going to answer this question. Do you think that you can do that now because you have pushed yourself so far, so hard? Or do you wish that you had gone back and done things the way you're doing them now back then?
I wish I'd have done both. I wish I've had the extremity part of my life where I'm pushing myself to that point of past what I think I'm capable of. But then I also wish that I wasn't so hard on myself, man. Like I've spent a lot of years of my life, I've never really said this before. I've spent a lot of years of my life, I think, at my own expense. It makes me emotional to say it. I don't even know where that's coming from. At my own expense in the service of other people. And I think I had this delusion that I had to be almost suffering in order to produce bliss for other people. And some of that software was probably installed in me when I was young, with my dad being an alcoholic when I was young. And so, no, brother, I know I could have pushed myself and been one intense beast and still been a little bit more kind to myself. There's a more beautiful and elegant way to get to the results that I wanted. I totally know what you're saying, that there's different seasons of your life, and it's easy to say when you got a couple $100 million in the bank and all that other stuff, like, you know what, I'm gonna stretch now. I'm gonna get a massage.
It's a little bit different than that. So one, I think your insight about what you learned to do to be the peacemaker in your family, to read your dad, to figure out where he was, and that you were still so generous to him as well as to the rest of your family, to take his hand, to, and you talk about this in the book, so I highly encourage people to read it. But you would take his hand and try to shift his mood, and that really trained you to be somebody that could read people and help change their state, which I think is incredible. But the way that I see it is that you've earned the right, and I'm going to back up in a second, but you've earned the right to get to that position because you know you can fall back on discipline, the habits, all that stuff. Because what I'm thinking is, okay, if I'm 24 and I'm encountering Ed Mylett for the first time, and I have this glimmer of like, ooh, maybe I can do something more with my life. That guy really does, and this is projecting because this is where I was, but that guy probably really does need to go hard first. And he needs first to learn to be tough, to be a badass. Like for me to transform my physique, I had to imagine my wife being physically assaulted. It was the only way I could show up and put in the work.
You got leverage on yourself.
Exactly. And if somebody had been at that moment telling me, no, you need to be kinder, gentler, it's like, on balance, you're right. And if you're talking to me when I'm in my 50s, 100%. But in the beginning, I wouldn't have been able to be so nuanced. And so I guess what I'm saying is, with what you've done and accomplished, you understand the nuance. You understand how important it is. To do all of that and to sacrifice yourself doesn't make sense.
I think you're right. I think we agree. So I think you have to know yourself. What's your default place? My default position has been all my life to try to earn things. I conflated when I was young. The only time I got love from my dad is if I achieved something, if I did something, Dad, I got an A, Dad, I hit a home run, Dad, I won the spelling bee, So I conflated achievement and pushing myself with love. So I know me. I know that part of me is sort of my default place to go. My default place is to do this. I think you have to know yourself. I think if your default is to not do those things, then giving yourself a break and being kinder and gentler is the absolute worst thing that you could do to yourself. In my case, man, it's been a lifetime. I was never a child. I was never a little boy. That 5-year-old, I was literally not a child. My dad would, this from the book, 5 years old. I got 2 skills in life, man. One is I can communicate. The other one is I can be present and read people. The present and read people is really simple. I had 3 sisters and a mom. And when my dad would walk through that front door at 5 years old, this beautiful little boy that I would have to look up at this man and quickly figure out, was he drunk or sober? What was his body language like? How was he walking? Was his tie? Was he slurring his words? And if it was drunk, Dad, sisters need to get upstairs, Mom, go take a shower. And then the man of the house, me at that time, would take over and, like you said, grab my dad's hand and change his state. Dad, I hit a home run today. Dad, I got a 96 on my spelling test. And so I never afforded myself or was afforded to be a boy in my life, to ever really have a bunch of peace or bliss in that life. And my dad got sober, and you know that, and he was my best friend. But that part of my life was taken from me. I never had it. So I don't have to worry about Ed Mylett's, drive or ambition or any of those other things. I got to worry about this dude hurting himself, metaphorically, but actually theoretically too, in any possible way. And so you just got to know yourself. If your default is you'll cool it, then you know what? The worst thing you could do is give yourself a break. You're wired like me, and you beat yourself to a pulp all the time, and you think you can do that, and there's some point in your life you'll fray. And there's just a part of your brain, man. There's the neural parts of our brain are telling us, man, can you give me a little dopamine? Can you give me a little hit of something blissful? Can I celebrate this a little bit? Can I be a little bit more kind to myself? Because if you don't do that, eventually you've trained your brain that you don't want to do those things.
Yeah, I think learning to love yourself is critical. I always tell people, in my back pocket, I have detachment at all times, like a Buddhist style detachment.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. Success, money, all those things ultimately are irrelevant. If you hate yourself and you're rich, you're still going to have a terrible life.
You got it. How's the next step happen?
I began to discover brain plasticity. So I'm laying on the floor in my apartment. I'm flirting with depression. I just don't know how I'm going to make anything in my life, feel hopeless and lost. And so I start reading about the brain. And reading in college revealed itself to me as the way to gain knowledge. And so I start reading about the brain. I see there's this debate going on. This is like late 90s, early 2000. And there's a camp of people saying, no, you can learn, even like to your last day on this planet. But it was highly debated. It's not anymore, but it was then. And I said, I choose to believe that. I choose to believe that I can grow and change. And so I start reading voraciously. I start thinking about brain plasticity and getting better. I take a job as a teacher and realize in teaching them, I'm able to make their films better. And if I can make their films better, why can't I make my own films better? So that starts to rebuild me, and I start thinking of myself as someone that needs to grow and learn and get better. So it's now called the growth mindset. You can now get a book on it. You can watch 1,000 YouTube videos. None of this existed back then, which is why all the stumbling around. But I start reading, and I start reading voraciously, and it starts to build my belief system. And that belief system ultimately is what completely changes my life. But first I need some more pain and suffering.
Okay.
So when I meet my wife, part of what she's attracted to is I'm talking growth mindset, man. I'm like, I can do this. This is what I'm going to do. My dreams are big. I went through this. I've learned from it. I know how to do this now. I got it. Trust me. Come with me, kid.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to be rich one day. And literally, that's what I'm saying to her.
Yep.
And she's into it, ready to go for the fight, wants to be a part of it. Like, my wife is a real slugger. And so we then are doing the back and forth, because she started as my student at the film school, and we fell in love, but she's in London and I'm in LA, and so we're having to do back and forth, and I find myself living in London. And now I want to ask her hand in marriage. And I know she's old school, so I need to go to her dad.
Yeah.
And I go to her dad and I say, you know, I want your blessing to ask your daughter to marry me. And in the nicest way possible, he says no. And my wife, Lisa, had always warned me, my dad's going to quiz you. When I introduce you, my dad's going to quiz you. Introduces me, he almost doesn't look at me, okay? No quizzing. Get to know him a little bit, no quizzing. Seems kind of disinterested. He'd ask me a question and then wouldn't even listen for the answer. But when I say, I want your blessing, just like starts going through all these questions. And the final question was, how do you plan to take care of my daughter? Because he was very successful.
Okay.
And he said, my daughter's become accustomed to a certain lifestyle. And how are you going to provide that for her? And I said, sir, I know what you see right now is a broke, unemployed kid. Wow. But I'm the most ambitious person you've ever met, and I will one day make your daughter rich. And he said, thank you. I hear that. I still don't want you to marry my daughter. Now, important to acknowledge, he's always been incredibly kind to me.
Yep.
He was just very clear that he did not want me to marry his daughter.
Man.
And so that was like, whoa, like the gauntlet has been laid down. I'm going to rise up to this. And so in my soul, I'm like, I've got this, man. I'm going to do this. I'm committed. There's no way I will not get rich now, because I'm going to take care of that woman. I'm going to show him that I'm right. Ooh. And then the next morning I lay in bed for 3 hours, maybe 4. And the day after that, 3-4 hours again. Why? Because it was cold. I didn't want to get up and put a sweatshirt on and literally walk the 8 paces. And so I would sweat it because she was working, and my job was to make her lunch. And she would come home and we'd eat lunch together. And when we get to the punchline of what I'm like today, even I have a hard time believing that was really me. So then these 2 successful entrepreneurs walk into my class. And up to that point, I'd promised myself 2 things. So I grew up chubby in a morbidly obese family, and with no money. And I said, one day I'm going to be rich, and one day I'm going to have 6-pack abs. And that was my promise. And these guys walked in and they were rich and they had 6-pack abs. And they said, look, we're starting a technology company. Why don't you come be a copywriter? And I was like, absolutely. And it's one of those where people are like, what are you doing? Like, you're leaving the secure job? For me, I was like, they're like unicorns to me.
Yeah.
They are literally the thing I'm looking for.
Yeah.
They are rich and they have 6-pack abs, and they're going to let me into their company.
Yeah.
And so their whole pitch was, look, man, this is a startup. You can have any job in this company you want. You just have to become the right person for the job. So it was a tech company. It was in this beautiful office overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Every single person in that company had a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the Pacific Ocean, except me. And they put me in the server room, which had no windows and a bunch of computers, all whirring and making noise. And I remember one of the guys was like, who's the kid in the server room? And so that's how I became known. I was the kid in the server room. I didn't know anything about business. I would bring my wife to visit me in the office, and I'm like, look how beautiful the office is, and this is where I'm at. And like literally like those makeshift desks that are like really like a table that you would use on a picnic, but you've got a computer stacked on it. Yeah. That's where I worked all day.
Yeah, come on, brother.
And so that just being around other people now who had that same kind of drive.
Yeah.
And I remember, now people are really going to enjoy this one.
Yeah.
We used to race to see who could relax our bladder the fastest and finish peeing sooner. And that got me thinking at tempo, right? Like you're snapping. And that literally, I could feel it make my brain speed up.
What?
It's one of the most surreal things. Now, since then, I've read studies. The number of patents filed in a city is directly correlated to the speed at which the average citizen walks 20 yards on the sidewalk. Come on. Let that sink in. So that little, and I'm obsessed, I have the chills now. Yeah. I'm obsessed with the physiological hooks that can help you develop your mind and moving fast and being made fun of, by the way, when I move slowly. That if I got out of the car last, or you take too long to piss, any of it, you're gonna get teased. And so now I'm in this environment where the standards are crazy high. Baby. And I've now got the drive. I want to be held accountable. I'm thinking I'm going to make her rich. I remember being in the gym. I hate working out. And I would sit in the gym.
Especially the shape Lisa's in and you're in.
Well, she's a beast.
Yeah, I know.
Don't confuse me and my wife.
I know, by the way, I know.
She is a monster.
We flex together. I know it's a difference.
You know the drill.
I do.
I am not cut of her cloth.
Could we say 1 second on something? I just want to go back for a minute because I think, man, there's so much stuff in here. And again, it's your story, but I can't get over that all of these things lead to you because that's a lot of turns, right? But I do want to touch on one thing because you changed environments. And to me, it sounds like one of the key things was having some thoroughbreds you started to run with, like that power of environment. So before we talk about that part, I want you to just speak to that because we're going to be everywhere today on this stuff. But I'm a monster believer that the way you change your identity is your associations. And so what you just described to me was this guy who's trying to find an identity for the better part of his life, right? I'm ambitious, but I'm not driven, right? I break down barriers for 2 years, then I get a big ego. Then I do something great, then my ego gets smashed, right? Then I start, my mouth writes these big old checks to my father-in-law, I'm all fired up, then I sleep in bed all day long, right? But do you believe big time that identity is shaped by these associations in everybody's life?
100%.
Talk about that for a second.
So it's so aggressive and it's now getting repeated. So I fear trite words, but words become trite because they're so true that people repeat them until they lose their meaning. So you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. That's just true. But now it's become so common to say, and it's like every Instagram post that I fear it's going to lose its meaning. Who are you spending time with? Because if you're spending time with people like you're spending time with people like me, I'm raising you up, or I'm just not going to spend time with you. So it's like now, if you get in a mix of people like that who are like, man, we'd love for you to raise up to this level. But if you don't, it's fine, but we're just not going to spend time with you. All of a sudden, that desire to belong to something powerful that you can see is going to lead you to your dreams. And I remember saying to my wife over and over and over, they are the surest path to my success. I don't know anything else. I just know if I can hang on to these guys, they're going to make me better. And so that was through all the years of being embarrassed and developing actually massive anxiety because I was always behind. I was always the dumbest person on the phone. I was always the dumbest person in the room. And it was like, was I going to be willing to emotionally go through that to get great? And most people can't. So here's the thing. Now imagine, I'm not the only person they said, hey, this is a startup. You can have any job you want. I saw 12 people, maybe more, come and go over the years. They just couldn't emotionally deal with it. And so I remember thinking to myself, why is it that I'm able to do this? And the answer was I could self-soothe faster than anyone else. So I would get kicked in the face and I would do something really dumb. I'd be called an idiot, told how stupid I was. And then I'd just be like, all right, I need to recenter. And that just became my obsession. I need to be able to emotionally get back to complete neutral so fast that you don't even see it register on my face.
How'd you do it? How do you do that?
Literally practicing. So remember, at the same time I'm reading about the brain, voraciously, I'm reading about people that understand human behavior. I'm getting into cognitive science, neuroscience, like really going into it. So I'm reading all this stuff going, whoa, we're just a chemical processing plant. There are physiological hooks into these chemicals. So, hey, if you're mad, scared, whatever, but you force yourself to laugh out loud, you will change your neurochemical state. And you literally, your experience is the neurochemistry. So I was like, whoa, so I could be in a situation where I'm being berated or I legitimately mess up and it costs money and it's like, whoa, that's on me and it is nobody's bad but my own. And I realized that what most people do, their strategy is to deflect it. It's your fault, it's not my fault.
Yes.
So I started thinking of this as a metaphor. People are throwing gold at me. They're throwing it really hard, and I can put a shield up and deflect it, but then I lose that piece of gold. If I drop my shield and just take the pain, let it hit me in the head, then I bend down and go, this thing, which was me being stupid, there's a lesson here. And now I have this piece of gold. But the whole thing is I have to be defenseless. So I have to own it, I have to take it, I can't fight. If someone is like, this to this day, if our team is like, hey, there's something we need to point out to you, I'll do this. I square up to it. I want them to know, like, hey, I want to hear it. I want to know. Like, I want to be literally physically open. I'm not going to close down. I'm going to do everything I can to square off, to open myself so that they know I'm receptive to the criticism, right? Because that's the nugget of gold. What I know is it's going to hurt. It's going to sting. But if I can emotionally recenter so fast you don't even see that I went through something, now I can just process, how do I take this information you've given me and get better?
We are going to talk about John Maxwell for a second. I'm listening to this man who's been at this for more than 1 decade, put it mildly. And I'm watching him at the top of his game. I've known him a while. I haven't read every one of the 86 books, but I've read a lot of them. And way before we met, you all heard me singing the praises of John Maxwell. And I'm watching him, like, he's better than he's ever been. Is there something that you could impart to all of us about, you're on the top of your game? How do you do that to sustain that level of, what's the mechanism that drives you to stay at this level or even keep getting better?
I love the questions you ask. I mean, you go right to my heart every time. First of all, I am getting better. I am at the top of my game. Now, I turned 74 on Saturday, February 20th. So I turned 74. So, okay, now get this. And I'm in my best days. But my best days today are because when I was in my 20s, I had a mentor share with me that growth was not automatic, that if I was going to personally grow, I was going to have to dig for it and be intentional in it. And that getting older is automatic, getting better is not. And so once I understood the difference, I said, okay, I've got to get a game plan for my personal growth. And I did. And my game plan for personal growth over the years has been quite simple. It deals around REAL, relationships, equipping, attitude, and leadership. And if you'll read my books, almost all my books are either in relationship, equipping, attitude, or leadership category. And I did that because I came to the conclusion at 27 that if I could teach people how to do those 4 things really well, they could pretty much be successful in any kind of venture that they have. Because, I mean, if you're good with people relationally, if you know how to equip people and build yourself a team, if you got an attitude that can handle COVID-19 and adversity, and if you can lead and influence people, pretty much you're in the game of success. So I said every day I'm going to learn how to relate better, equip better, attitude better, lead better. I'm going to live in this world. And I didn't become goal-oriented. I became more values-oriented. And I think this is a difference. Now, I'm not opposed to goal-oriented at all. Yeah. But let me tell you something. If you're growth-oriented, you'll hit all your goals.
That's right.
But if you're goal-oriented and not growth-oriented, every time you hit a goal, you know what you do? You go to the game, what's next? Okay, now what do? I just made this much money. Oh my gosh, I got this position, and okay, I bought that house. Now what do I do? And to take the what do I do out of your life, just begin to grow. Now, stay right with me. What happens because I grow and have done this for, we're about 50 years now on it. I have increased my growth capacity. This is where people miss. My growth capacity is humongous. It's like going to the gym. Hey, you increase physical capacity. It's like reading. You increase mental capacity. Well, I've increased growth capacity. My growth capacity is much larger than most people's. Not because I'm smarter than most people. It's because I've been doing it for 50 years. I've got a long runway now. So my growth capacity allows me to grow more, faster, and compound it more than other people. Because consistency compounds.
Yeah.
So at this stage of the game, everything I touch gets bigger and better, but it's because my capacity is growing. Now, put on top of that, I don't think there's a finish line. So I'm not running a finite game. Now, Simon Sinek wrote a great book called The Infinite Game. It's a phenomenal book. He's a good friend, and it's a great game. And basically, Simon, I'm going to write a book, and I was already going to write it before Simon's, and now I told Simon I'm going to write it and just make it better than his. But I'm going to write a book. I'm kidding. He's a phenomenal writer. I'm going to write a book entitled "Is There a Finish Line?"
Oh, so good.
And Ed, for most people, the answer is yes.
Mm.
Most people have what I call a self-imposed finish line. When I get to this age, I'm going to quit. When I make this much money, I'm going to quit. And so they put their lines out there. Now, if I put a finish line out there, you know, I'm 74. I'm going to quit. I'm not going to work anymore. Okay, whatever. What people don't understand is when you cross that self-imposed finish line, guess what? You're finished.
You're finished.
It's over. But if you live with no finish line, it's never over. What does that do? That keeps me in the game.
Wow.
It keeps me excited about what's happening because I'm never going to finish.
Wow.
I'm going to die, but I'm never going to finish. By the way, when I came into the game was already started. I didn't start the game. And it's not, hey, it's certainly going to not end when I leave. I mean, you know, I tell people when they think that they're indispensable, I say die and just find out how good we get along without you. I mean, oh my gosh, nobody's indispensable. So it's okay. But what this allows me to do is it allows me to stay fresh. It allows me to ask questions. It allows me to stay curious because I understand my growth capacity is great and I'm playing in a game that never is finished.
I got to tell you, John, in my career doing this, that's one of my favorite answers of all time, of anything I've ever asked somebody. And for all of you leaders out there, wow, not having a finish line. You know, I put a couple in my life on myself, self-imposed finish lines. And as I got closer to them, they just evaporated and I just quit doing it. Now I've sort of decided to be the way that you are. But the other thing that gives you hope is that as you work on growing yourself, you increase your capacity to grow even more. I've never heard that said before. I've never heard that said before, but I got to that's more fire because I have experienced that, you know, with trying to keep my humility, but I've experienced that in my own life. Like my capacity to grow exponentially is much greater now than it was even 10 years ago because I've been growing. And I never really thought, I think we think the reverse. Well, I've grown so much, there's just not that much more to go. But it's the reverse. That's brilliant.
It's totally the reverse. The more you grow, the more you have to grow. The more it's like the more you know. The more you know, you know what? The more you know you don't know.
That's so true.
The only people that think they know something are people who know nothing. And
That's so true.
And the only people that think that they've all stopped growing are people that never grew.
It's so true. Is there something? Let me ask you a very hard question. Go ahead. Can I ask you a hard question?
Well, I may not be able to answer it, but you can ask it.
What did you all through all this growth? Is there something that you used to believe about leadership to be true that you no longer do? That you've evolved out of that belief system? Is there? You're making your face like there's a lot.
We could do an hour. Let me tell you something. If you really are growing. You know, Gandhi talked about a false position, and his false position basically was that you try to hold on. If you're growing, growth means change, which means you can't hold on to things that you one time thought were true or you believed because you're evolving and you're getting better. Let's put it this way. When I was 25, I had a lot of certainties. At 74, I have very few.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting.
Because life has taught me that it's not always black and white. It's not either or. It's not. It's many times a combination. But now here's what's beautiful. I have less. If I had 1,000 certainties at 24, at 74, I have 10. Okay. But can I tell you something about those 10? I'm more certain about those 10 than I ever have been before. They've been tested. And can I tell you something? A certainty that hasn't been tested can't be trusted. And so this whole process of growth means I am not the same. So people that knew me 20 years ago, it's like the guy who came up to me. I was speaking at a conference and he said, "Oh my gosh, this was amazing." He said, "I wish I could have heard you 20 years ago." And I smiled and I said, "No, you don't." He said, "Oh, no." He said, I wish I could have heard you 20 years." I said, "No, you don't." And he said, "Well, if I would have heard 20 years ago what I heard today," he said, "it would have changed my life." I said, "If you had heard me 20 years ago, you wouldn't have heard what you heard today."
That's awesome. That's so good.
I'm growing.
Yeah.
I'm growing. I'm evolving. I didn't come out of my mother's womb with the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership.
Right.
it's a process. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. And I think everyone listening to this should be gaining hope from this. That if you start on this journey of establishing your values and getting people sitting at the table with you and being a possibilist and committing to being a grower and getting to that place where people believe you can help them and that they can trust you. And these things are priceless. And for me to hear about the finish line today is something that I needed to evaluate. There's just so many things. Go ahead.
Could I tell you a quick story?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. It's about the finish line, because you said something about you had a couple of finish lines that were kind of self-imposed, and they got there and they faded. Let me tell you, because I could tell you, see, what I really love was when I have time is to talk about all the mistakes, failures, and stupid things that I've done. Because I've often said, if you want to hear my success, we can do that in a day. If you want to hear about my stupidity, this is going to be a week series. and so I'm going to tell you, let me tell you a real. I had read this story about this guy that was a radio ham operator, and he said something about he'd taken the last marble out of his basket. And the basic story was that he put like 5 years of marbles for every week. And every week he'd go and he'd take a marble out, and he was in a countdown. And this morning I took my last marble out of my basket. And I thought, oh my gosh, I think because I was wanting to turn the companies over to Mark Cole, and I was wanting to pass on a lot of stuff. I said, I'm going to get me a jar so that you could see these marbles. And I put in like 3.5 years of marbles. And I told Mark, I told the whole company, in 3.5 years, I'm gone. So just understand this, it's over. Okay. And so every week I'd say, Mark, you take a marble out of that, here comes the marbles start going smaller and smaller. How stupid can you be? and so it was true. Can I tell you something? I'll tell you how stupid I was. I was losing my marbles. Okay. That's how stupid I was.
Come on. That's so good.
So I literally get in front of a lot of the people who knew me well, and I had this big jar of marbles up here, and they'd heard the marble story. And I said, I just want you to know I was so stupid. I was so wrong. I mean, who wants to live their life like Cape Canaveral in a count town? You know what I'm saying? I mean, who wants to do it? And I picked up that, I'll never forget, I took that jar of marbles, and I just threw them on the floor.
He did.
And they just bounced everywhere. And I told him, I said, I'm never going to do this to me again. I'm not in a countdown. I'm only in a make your life count mode. And people today that are on my team, they say, I'll never forget the day you lost your marbles. And
that's wonderful.
but there's no finish line. There's no. I'm going to live till I die and not get the two confused.
Someone said you, because I think like it's rare that you put someone who's the best on the planet at something in front of you, like on the earth spinning right now. And we said, who in the last 25 years, let's say, take that window of time, just that basic window of time, which is a fair window, who's probably the healthiest, fittest person, the icon that's sustained it, grown it, and got more fit, and also helped more people get there too that he trains with? It would be this human, right, sitting next to me. So what does that, I know we've talked a lot about it, but like it's hard to describe yourself. I have a hard time doing it. It's like, I'm not even sure how I am. I'm just that way, right? But let me ask you something, seriously. What's that mindset like? Like, don't sugarcoat it, no BS, don't be humble. Is it just like you want to crush everybody? Is it you're trying to chase the best you? Is it just like this stacking of disciplines that's built you into this thing? Like, what is it that's like this world-class mindset you hold? Do you know?
I would say it's I want to be the number one guy. I want people to be able to say, hey, I want to do a Mike O'Hearn. I want to be like Mike O'Hearn when I'm that. And that
whatever it is.
It's just that long period of time.
Yeah.
And it's not just, I don't want you guys to sit there, and I guess I want people to live what I've lived and stop giving the excuses and stop saying, I'm 30 now, it's downhill from here.
Well, doing pretty good.
College, I peaked, and then that's that. Yeah. It's like, there's a thing called science, and science will show you what's possible, what's not possible. There is something that's called heart that can break that, and something that can set it apart. And I'm just saying that the one thing that we're doing now, and I'm lucky enough to be around, is to be around doctors and science and actually doing tests now, going, why is it that I got to be able to do this for such a long period of time, and not just as a average Joe? Because everybody's like, as long as I can be healthy, fuck healthy. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Bleep that out. But be a freaking superhero for your whole life.
Yes.
And So I guess for me, it's consistency is me describing myself, but the hunger to be the very number one.
Yes,
So-
yes. What's the next 5 or 10 years look like for you, do you think? We know what the past looked like. We know what the present looks like. But when we're going to do more of these, but I'm going to have you back here in 5 years.
I think,
what do you think?
I love the purchasing properties and commercial real estate. I love this, and it's something that, again, I think you agree with this.
Yeah.
You can be around your friends, but you need some elite people that are raising you up, and I've got that, and I've had that. In the last 10 years, my life has completely changed to the point of where I'm doing all charity, and I'm around guys that are better than me in other facets.
Me too.
And they make you stand up and go, listen, this is great.
Yeah.
What you doing? But I need you here.
Yes.
This is what you need to do. Now you need to man
You
up.
all
and
need
so-
these people in your life.
Yeah. And so
You going to buy
I
more
got that.
property? You think we see in movies?
more properties, leads in movies, and continue to travel the world and talk.
Yeah. Do you think you'd be even more fit?
I do. Listen, I'm as much as I got crazy this year. I already told my girl, and I said I want to even be better than I was for New Year's.
I love this, brother. You inspire me.
Thanks, man.
No, you inspire me. You do. Like
Appreciate
you're
that.
inspiring to me. This is. I can tell you straight up.
That's a fun love. Oh, is this your ride?
Yeah, this is how you're getting home.
Helicopter's coming
This is how
in,
you're getting
guys.
home, right over the ocean.
Yeah, we're gonna do more of this. This went too fast, but I just something that when you can push somebody that's already at a pinnacle level, that's badass.
It is badass, and that's why I try to surround myself with guys like you, and like you just said, that's part of the formula. Everybody is that you surround yourself with people who do make you better, whatever the industry is. Doesn't even matter. They just make you want to be better by their example, not their yelling and screaming. Right? Their example
Thank you for
does.
saying that,
It's a
though.
fact. The other thing I want to tell everybody that when you're listening to Mike, there's a uniqueness to him that I want to point out. It's that not only can he do these things, but he can articulate them. That's rare for an athlete. It's rare for a business person to be able to articulate it. The reason I point that out to you is you can get Mike to come speak to your organization. You can have him come talk to your group. He can do inspirational talks, fitness talks. This is someone that you ought to bring into your company to have speak to you. And he also is somebody that just by following him on social media will alter your life. You will have no excuses. You will be inspired, right? You will see one of the great lives being lived, but there's also all this fitness stuff, all this information out there.
This quote by Thomas Edison said, "When you feel you've exhausted all options, remember this, you haven't."
I love that.
That's the power of one more.
one more.
And so I have lived this book in my life. Like I have lived this mindset, and it has changed my life because I've always been just one step away, one habit away, one mindset away from this amazing life that I'm grateful and blessed to live.
Well, that's the truth, right? You're right. And I think the great lie in life is that, some scriptures say, well, where there's no vision, the people will perish. Whatever your scriptures are. Really, do you have no vision? If you ask the average person, you want to be happy or sad? What's your vision? They'd say, I want to be happy. You want to be rich or poor? Most people say, I'd like to be rich. Do you want to contribute or make no difference in the world? I want to contribute. Do you want beautiful memories or no memories? I want memories. So there's a vision. Our issue is depth perception. We think it's further away than it is. And because we think it's so far away, Jay, we create patterns and behaviors in our life that perpetually keep it there.
Ooh.
And that's what we do in our life. But what if that's the great lie of life? And what if the truth is that you're one relationship away, one meeting away, one conversation, one podcast, one interview, one new thought, one new emotion, one new tactic or strategy away from completely changing the trajectory of your life. And everyone that you and I know that we both work with, that we're blessed to work with in our lives, the truth is it was one decision, one meeting, one extra rep, one more phone call, one thing they did that changed their trajectory. Then the question then becomes, how do I do it? And so the strategies are in the book, but conceptually, that's 100% how you change your life.
Yeah, and you're so right. I was thinking about this morning. Last year I had a double hernia surgery on the front. So I couldn't walk for about a month. And when I say I couldn't walk, I mean like I literally couldn't move.
Oh my gosh.
It was like I felt like I was teaching myself to walk again. Like that's how it felt. It's really interesting what you just said about how we perpetually push it far away. I would wake up every morning and my mind or my initial mindset was like, it will be gone today.
Yeah.
It must have gone today. Like today it will be fully healed. I'll be fine today. And I would wake up and I wouldn't be. And I would feel like healing was so far away.
Yes.
it would be like 80% away that I was missing out on the 1% change since yesterday.
You got it.
Since yesterday, I made 1% change. I wasn't feeling the same pain in my nerves. I was able to be flexible by 1% more.
Yes.
And I was missing out on all of that because I was so obsessed with how far I was.
That's the journey. And and what happens is when you live with an expectation that these one mores exist, the reticular activating system in your mind filters them into your awareness. I call it the matrix in the second chapter of the book. When you wake up believing, hey, I'm one decision away, I'm one meeting away, one relationship away, that's not hokey. Your mind begins to filter the people, places, and things into your awareness. You develop something called sensory acuity. You hear conversations you weren't hearing. We've all had that experience where we're on an airplane, I can't stop hearing these people over here. Or you walk in a loud room, but you can hear your own name auditorily over all the other names in the room. That's because it's important to you and it matters. You see things. And so when something becomes important to you and you believe it to be true, the RAS goes to proving it for you. And where I learned this, ironically, I talk about it in the book, is my father was an alcoholic and had tried to get sober many, many times. And I'll never forget it, Jay. We were driving to a baseball game of mine. My dad started crying. I'd never seen my dad cry before. And he pulls the car over and he still isn't looking at me, but he's crying and he says, Eddie. And then he turns to me and he goes, I'm going to try to get sober. And I'll never forget this, brother. He goes, one more time.
Wow.
And I said, really, Daddy? He goes, I'm going to give it one more try. And I said to him, I said, why would this be any different this time? And he said, never said this to me before. He goes, because I love you and you deserve a father you can be proud of. And you can't be proud of me right now. And I think every great thing we do in life is one away, but it's also born from love. To talk about your book, when you love people or you love something so deeply, if that love is greater than what the obstacles might be, now you got a shot to do it. Then my dad gets sober. He comes home from rehab. I say, Daddy, are you never going to drink again? And he said, I can't promise you that. I can promise you I'm not going to drink for one more day at a time.
Wow.
And he lasted the rest of his life stacking those one more days up. And so I know the power of one more. And Jay, the other thing, I also know humans can change. I watched my hero do it. I watched my dad live my first 15 years, saw him in a lot of fights.
Wow.
A lot of lying, a lot of difficult times. And then I saw this man transform. And in life, we're most qualified to help the person we used to be. And what we think in life, and I hope everybody gets this, we think the things we're most ashamed of, embarrassed by, our divorce, our bankruptcy, or maybe we've just always been average and ordinary. This disqualifies me from being successful and happy. What if that's not true? What if the hardest things of your life are the very things that qualify you? I'll give you an example. You know, my dad got sober. Somebody helped him. My dad was going to take his life or lose his family. And I didn't know who it was till months ago. Some precious human being whom I didn't know. In my dad's darkest hour of his life, Jay said, I'll help you. I'll help you. Little did that person know I'd be his son. And I'd help millions of people. And I'd be on Jay Shetty's show. And we both help millions of people. And the more ironic thing that this person helped my dad is what qualified them to help my dad. They were a drunk. They were an alcoholic. They at one time were a drug addict. They at one time were lying and stealing and living in the shadows. The very thing that person probably figured, that disqualifies me from having a successful life, was the one thing that did qualify them to help my dad. So if you're listening to this and you've had something you're ashamed of or a failure or a setback, you're most qualified to help the people you used to be. And that person, that alcoholism they suffered with their drug addiction helped my dad live those one more days forever.
That is the best explanation I've heard of how pain turns into purpose.
That's right.
The thing that brought you down, that broke you down, that made you feel like you were losing everything.
That's right.
Gave you back everything when you used that to serve the people that were struggling with it.
And then there's a purpose. And, you know, if you can survive the temporary pain in your life, and all pain is temporary. I watched my father pass away last year. He was in tremendous pain. Even our bodies are temporary. Only our souls are permanent. If you can survive the temporary, on the other side of temporary pain, you meet another version of yourself, another insight about yourself. And that's why it's so important to grow as a person, because the more we grow and become a new person, we can help those that used to be like us. And that's why you and I are so addicted to growing and learning, and we're curious, because if you used to be a broken person and you no longer are quite as broken, you can help broken people. If you used to be broke, financially, and you no longer are. You can help people. Whatever you do for a living, at one time you didn't know about it, and now you do. You can help those who need to know about it. And so you're immensely qualified if you understand the power of doing one more.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Tell me about, so let's say, and you probably come up against this all the time. Sure. A lot of the people say, okay, I'm going to practice that. I'm with you, Ed. I love you and Jay. I'm listening, and I go, yes, I'm going to practice the power of one more. Now, what I find, and this is why you're so great at teaching this, because you're not teaching it as a gimmick, a glitch, or like a little affirmation. This is like real, it makes sense, like it works. People get so tied to the result that when they try it the next day and the sales meeting doesn't go their way, or the pitch doesn't go their way, they go, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Why didn't it work, and how should we respond when we fail or get rejected the next day?
Well, it didn't work because you're so attached to the outcome. I coach a lot of athletes. I know you do as well. And one of the things that's a really nuanced thing in life, it's great to have goals. You should have goals. I want to do this or that. But in the moment of execution, you have to separate from outcome in the moment that you're executing and just be present and exist. I talk about this in the book. Here's what I would say. If you're going to win long term, 95% of people have an operating system in their mind where they operate out of history and memory.
I like that.
And about 5% of humans operate out of vision and imagination. So the reason we're so much happier, I believe, when we're children is we have no history and memory. So we operate out of imagination and dreams and vision. But at some age, some people it's 5 years old, some it's 8, some it's 18, some it's 28. They create a history. And that history then becomes the operating system. So even if they take on a new behavior or tactic, they're operating out of a pattern of thought and belief that's historic and memory-based. And so the number one thing I would say is begin to operate out of your imagination again, out of your vision again. Create from that place. If you create from that place, now you're not tied to the result in that moment. You're giving yourself space to imagine and create something new in your life.
That I've never heard that in that language, man. That is so powerful.
Thank you.
You're so right about as kids how we don't have any memory or history, so we don't have any blocks, we don't have any limits.
Don't. And begin to listen to the people around you. People say, hey, you're the product of who you hang around. How do I know if they serve me or not? Here's one way to just deduce this, because they could be beautiful people who care about you, and they might even support you. But when you're with them, what are you ever have those friends you're with them, you're like, you remember when, you remember that party, remember that thing? Yeah. And if your friends are constantly bringing you to the filtration system of memory and history all the time, think this through. How often are those friends saying, hey, what are you working on now? Yeah. Where are you going? What's your vision? What do you want to create? Yeah. And maybe that sounds hokey, but you and I have both our friends have the most amazing histories, and you can't get them to talk about them.
No.
You have to work, because what are they still doing? Yeah. They're talking about now and where they're going. Yeah. Their viewpoint in their life is being present and having a vision for the future.
Yeah.
A formula for misery, a formula for lack of creativity, lack of productivity is constantly being history and memory.
Yeah.
Even if it's good, it doesn't serve us. And for most of us, it's not good. And we keep living from it or trying to move away from it. Create a new future. Don't move away from the past. Create a brilliant, imaginative, curious, vibrant vision for your life.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, we're always trying to create the same past.
Yes.
As opposed to a new future.
A new future.
And I find that what's really interesting about that, all the studies show that nostalgia makes us believe that the past was more phenomenal than it actually was. If you remember that party you went to at college, it's better in your memory than it actually was. If you actually could have gone back and remembered how you felt hungover and what you broke a bone or whatever happened, but now in your memory, it's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Right? So our memory also is slightly warped of the past.
No question.
It can make things feel much better or much worse sometimes.
No question.
But what's really coming out for me right now is this idea that it's something you said a couple of moments ago, and it sparked a thought for me. I remembered a story that Vanessa Bryant told about Kobe Bryant after he passed away. I was fortunate enough to interview him around 3 months before his tragic passing. And she told this story, and she said that Kobe would play through every injury. He would play through every pain. He would play through everything, even when the doctors and his coaches would say, stop playing. And she asked him, she said once, why he still plays, right? Again, going back to our curiosity, not assuming you know your partner. She asked him, why do you still play? And this is just her and him. There's no cameras, she's telling this story, but at the time it was just them two. He said it's because there's someone who's paid for a ticket today. They saved up. And this is the only time they're ever going to be able to come. Maybe maybe a dad's brought his kid. Maybe someone's come to the game. They're a lifelong fan, and they came today. And today's the only day they're going to get to see me. And if I say I'm injured, they won't get to see me. So I'm going to play so that person,
that one person,
gets to see me play, and then he goes and wins.
Yes,
and it's like. That's love.
That's
right?
love.
That's what you were saying.
Love for something is in the present moment also, right? Wow. Love is not just for the past. And it's funny how important one day is, man. When my dad got sick, my dad got cancer. When he first got sick, he goes, hey, my dad was a dude. He goes, look, I'll fight this one time. Okay, I'll do your little chemo and your surgery, but I'm not going to pour poison into my body. I'm not going to lose my hair. I'm not going to deteriorate. I'll give this thing a shot once. If it doesn't work, I'm out. That led to 8 years of him fighting it.
Wow.
Chemo, radiation, proton therapy, surgery, chemo, experimental chemo. And he did lose his hair and he was in pain. And I'd say to my dad, Dad, you're suffering so much. He said, you wouldn't suffer. He said, no, Eddie, I'm in pain, but I'm not suffering. I choose not to suffer. And I'm not suffering because I get to see my grandkids again. And I said, Dad, why are you doing this? And he said, you only understand the power of one day when you're threatened with never having another one. I'll do anything for one more day. Get to be with you one more time. Give your mom a kiss one more time. Maybe I'll see one of my granddaughters get married. And he goes, I'll do anything for one more day. The beautiful thing is I was actually with Kobe a week before he passed away. We were in the same gym. Our daughters played volleyball. And ironically that day, I watched Kobe walk out of the gym. There was only a couple dads left. It was late at night. He stayed and I stayed. And he had his youngest daughter in his arm and he was rubbing his other daughter's back. And I remember taking note of it because I was with Bella at the other end of the gym. And I remember thinking, I don't hug Bella enough. I need to hug. No joke, bro. It's in the book. I went, I got to hug Bella one more time every day. Not just once a day, plus one more time every day. My daughter's going to get extra hugs because Kobe does that. What if I could have said to Kobe when he got in his car, Kobe, you have one more week, brother. Tell those that you love them. Get it right. Whoever matters to you, make it right. Call your dad, make it right. Call your mom, call your family. What if the day before you could have said, Kobe, you have one day left. And my dad, same thing. I was with my dad when he had 1 day left. I was with my dad when he had 1 hour left. I was with my dad when he had one breath left. And when we begin to think of our life that way, the power of right now and having one more moment and one more minute is so beautiful. It's so blessed. It's so big. It's so amazing. Why would we spend that minute in history? Why would we spend that minute in the past when we could be fully present in creating the future? And so, I think most people think, Jay, everyone else is going to die. I think they just, I'm not going to die. Or they go, I'll get around to being happy. I'll get around to making my masterpiece of my life. I'll get around to my dreams. I'm going to get around to fixing this relationship that's broken. I'm going to get around to feeling those emotions. And then it's another day and another day. And they keep it in the distance until there are no more days. And I don't care if you're 18 years old listening to this, 28 or 48. We don't know if we have one more day or 100 more days or 1,000 more days. But we know this, there'll eventually be a time where we don't have any more days. And so why would we spend the ones that are coming looking at the past? And so my dad really taught me those lessons in watching him pass away. And that's why I have a whole thing in there of how to get 21 days a week, run mini days. I get 21 days a week. We still measure time, bro, like it's 1900. Think about 1900. Yeah. If I wanted to get you a note, I'd have to write a letter out, stick it on the back of a horse's butt in 1850. 30 days later, you get it. That was a 24-hour day. Now I can text you in 2 seconds. We measure time the same way. Yeah. So I teach you how to change your time so that you can make that day its maximum bliss, its maximum productivity.
What's one more that you're working on right now?
Right now, it's an interesting season of my life. I have a TV show that I did with NBC that's called Change that I think is, has a chance of getting picked up. But my one more that I'm working on right now for me in my life is my peace. And so there's this guy, Jay Shetty, that's a friend of mine that introduced me and my family to meditation. And I'm giving myself the gift of, I don't just do it in the morning now. I've given myself the gift of one more time every single day of just emptying my mind and trying to be fully present. And it's been work for me. I've got that busy type of a mind, but I have found that my peace in my life, most of us, Jay, have all these goals of things we want to do, and they're wonderful. And I believe in doing that. I think standards are more important than goals because, and I teach you in this book, how to set the standards that'll get those goals. But we really don't want the jet. We don't want the hit song. We don't want the amazing relationship. We don't want the $1 million. We want how we think it'll make us feel. And what if we began to become more intentional and outcome oriented about the things we feel in our life? And it took me a while, but now that I'm older, when I feel strong, when I feel blissful, when I feel peaceful, is when I produce the physical things that I want, not the other way around. Oof. And so my one mores are more emotional focus. Most of us, then I'll come up for air here, have an emotional home. There's 3 or 4 or 5 emotions we experience on a regular basis. I write about it in the book. And no matter what happens, we find a way, even if they don't serve us, to get those emotions. If your emotional home is fear, anxiety, worry, depression, anger, you find a way every week to get that emotion. But what if that emotional home could become bliss and peace and joy and creativity and ecstasy? And so I'm working on one more beautiful emotion for my emotional home, and for me, it's peace.
I love that. I love that answer, man. It's good to hear about what you've been saying. Like, we're not living in the past, and you're like in the present. But to have you answer that question, that peace is your presence. Like, that's what you're looking for.
Right
like,
now.
That's the present, and it shows that you're using this. Like, it works. You're doing it time and time again. And I love what you said. It moves from the physical things into the subtle, into the emotional, into the deeper. I think that's so profound. What was that one more that if you didn't do it, you wouldn't be here today? What was one of those ones that like that was the one that convinced me, apart from obviously your father, that you were like, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be Ed Mylett today. I wouldn't be maxed out life.
The first business I built was a financial business, and I had some success, Jay, like a lot of people do in life. And then it went backwards. And sometimes when you get up the flagpole just a little bit, and you come back down, that's an emotional difficulty. It could be a relationship that was good that's gone, or maybe you saved some money, it's gone. Maybe you lost a bunch of weight and got fit and you gained it back. For me, it was my business. And I called my dad. He was a pretty wise guy now that he was sober. And because I could tell you, man, I'd do one more rep in the gym. I haven't done 10 reps on a bench press in 30 years. I've done 10 plus one more a lot, though. I haven't done 45 minutes on a treadmill, but I've done 45 plus one more minute. 10 contacts a day? Never. 10 plus one more. But the biggest one more was actually something else. I called my dad and I said, hey, Dad, it's not going. The business is crashing. And I'm running out of money. Our power was turned off. Our water was turned off, Jay. I had to take my wife every morning. We'd lost our house. We're living in an apartment now. Then the water got turned off. You can't cook. You can't bathe. There was a apartment building. We had an outdoor shower at the swimming pool. And we were newlyweds. And I'd have to get up every morning, walk down there, and I'd hold a towel up while my wife took her shower every day outdoors and brushed her teeth. And then she'd switch and hold the towel up for me. And I'd walk back up to the apartment, and I was so emasculated, so ashamed, so embarrassed. And I was living a nightmare, selling a dream to everybody every day. We can do this. A lot of entrepreneurs or people can relate in their life. And anyway, I called my dad that night, and I said, I think I need to pack it in. I need to go get a job, and this success thing is not... It's not for people like us. And my dad goes, Eddie, you don't have to decide you're never going to quit. He goes, just don't quit for one more day. See how you feel tomorrow. I go, Dad, he goes, just don't do it for one more day. And I got up the next day and I still wanted to quit, but not quite as much. And then I went one more day and one more day. And I found myself about 30 days later, I didn't want to quit anymore. And thank God the one more I did was I went one more day without quitting. And I'm so grateful I didn't quit on my dream.
Oh, Ed, wow, that is like, oh my gosh, man. Like, everything you're just dropping right now, I'm just like, I hope everyone is taking notes. If you haven't been taking notes, I want you to take a screenshot right now of where we're at right now, because that's what you're going to have to listen to again. So take a screenshot, share it, tell everyone to go to this segment, listen to that over again, because I think what I'm hearing, is that this is a lifestyle. Like, this is a mindset. It's a lifestyle. It's an everyday, every moment way to live. This isn't just in the big business you're building. This is me telling my wife I love her one more time. This is me making sure I message my mom one more time. It's me making sure that when I'm sitting here with you, I'm always gonna have to ask you one more question because you keep giving so much. No, but you keep giving so. Well, that's what you just said. It will never end.
Mm-hmm.
I think if people feel like they tried a lot, and then they start building up resentment and like pain and bitterness towards that path. And a lot of people also that I know, they just think that there are some people who are meant to be.
I agree with this.
And then there are some people that are not meant to be.
That's correct.
And they carry that with them. And it comes from this like, oh yeah, you were meant to be this, or that person was meant to have it. But for me, this is where, and I heard that kind of come up in what you were saying to your dad, like, it doesn't happen to people like us.
Yes.
How does this rule, how does this principle apply to someone who's in that
Brother,
space?
best question ever. Because I grew up with you have an alcoholic dad or a drug addict, or maybe you come from divorce, or maybe your parents just didn't love you enough, whatever it was, didn't tell you they loved you enough. It's hard to have self-confidence. I was a little guy, I got bullied in school, and and even at this age now, bro, I if I'm being completely honest, self-confidence, we all teach that it's, part of keeping the promises you make to yourself. But what if you raise the standard a little higher? You keep the promises you make to yourself, plus one more. Because for me, self-confidence didn't come easy. I think in life, ultimately you're gonna get what you believe you deserve. And if you're wired like me, I didn't think I deserved a lot. I didn't even have a dad who could stop drinking, right? I wasn't 6'4". I don't have an incredibly high IQ. There's nothing really that impressive about me, nor were people very impressed with me most of my life. So that was my pattern. That was my history. That was my memory. And so I could wait around until I developed tremendous self-confidence, or I could begin to do things every day that were small. They're not major. And over time, when I did those one more calls, that one more meeting, that one more book I read, that one more podcast, not only am I doing more reps, so the likelihood of me being successful is bigger, but I started to convince myself I'm doing things other people aren't willing to do. Maybe I deserve things other people aren't going to get. And slowly but surely, I started to convince myself I did deserve it based on what I was doing, not necessarily the caliber of my talent.
Yeah.
And that was the difference.
Yeah, there's a thought I've been having recently, and it's that comfort creates self-care, but discomfort creates self-respect.
Ooh, boy, I love
right?
that.
Like, it's what you're saying.
I love
that. The one more discomfort every day,
Yes.
that's where self-respect comes from.
Yes.
You don't...
Great term.
You don't start to trust yourself or build self-esteem or believe in yourself because you just say it to yourself. It's coming, what you just said. You go out there and take one more meeting and see what you learn. You go out there and take one more risk, one more discomfort.
And I guarantee you, if you have a successful or happy friend, how you determine that, and you ask them this, they'd tell you that we're right.
Yeah.
They would tell you, gosh, that's right.
Yeah.
It's right. And the difference between winning and losing, happiness and sadness, is so small, it's almost scary to talk about. But the good news is I think I kind of know what it is, and it's this one more.
Absolutely. The people that I know that are the most successful and happy have more uncomfortable conversations.
Agreed.
They have more uncomfortable days. They have more discomfort in their lives.
Yes, totally agree with that.
But selected discomfort. But one of the other things that I'm asking from now, I'm like going into like the people that I know that I'm thinking about, I can see their faces and I want them to know that I'm asking for them. A lot of the time, one more in the wrong direction
That's right.
can also be really misguiding. Sometimes people, and I know you're a person of faith too, and so we can touch on this. Sometimes we're climbing the mountain and we keep doing one more, but we're actually going further away from who we are, who we want to be, our faith, our partners, right? We know people who've built multi-billion-dollar companies but lost their kids.
That's right.
Or they've become famous and rich, but they've their partner cheated on them, or like
We know
really
a lot of
painful
those.
stuff. And people who didn't do all of that, and that's happened too.
Sure.
Like it's both ways. How does one use one more and make sure it's in the right direction?
Such a great question. I'm doing this now regularly because I've made some of those mistakes and what I do is I check in with myself one more time, meaning it's important to ask yourself, what matters to me now? See, if we had this conversation 20 years ago, the things that mattered to me then are so different than what matter to me now. But a lot of us keep operating out of what used to. Maybe you've achieved or are pursuing a dream, and it's really, truly no longer your dream. It's no longer your dream. It's when I was young, listen, if we were going to do a podcast, you say, hey, I need you on the show. People are going to love you. You're going to get recognition. You're going to get all this acknowledgement. And that would have been my hot button, my need. I believe in the 6 human needs. My need was significance and recognition. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's wonderful. And so that's the button to get me to move would be significance, recognition. Well, I've been blessed the last 30 years or so of my life to have a beautiful abundance of significance and recognition. It's no longer what fills me. Now you get me to do an interview, you go, hey, I really think we could help some people. My big button in my life now is contribution. There was another stage in my life, it's still there, but hey, if you go there, you'll grow. I still want to grow, but I know me now. Right now, I'm in a season of my life that's contribution. It's giving. It's what fills my heart. And I think it's checking in with yourself one more time. What matters to me now? What do I want now? What's important to me now? What season? Maybe you're in a season where you need to rest. Maybe your spirit and everything about you is telling you, hey, it's time to feed you again. It's time to recharge. If that's the season, then answer that call. Don't play out of a past playbook. And so for me, that's the season I'm in now. And I'm sure that in 5 or 8 more years, there'll be something else. But I regularly, on a monthly basis, you recommend it in your book so beautifully about your relationship, checking in. You have these strategies you teach about weekly and monthly and quarterly and yearly with your partner of checking in with them. I also recommend you check in with yourself and what matters to you now. And so for me, it's a matter of checking in now so that I don't lose my family in the pursuit of my business or lose me.
Yeah.
Lose me. Who am I anymore? And I've had times where I'm like, this doesn't feel like me anymore.
Yeah.
And I had at least the ability to at least acknowledge that and make a change.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up seasons because I feel like no one and on planet Earth, we don't have the power to change the season.
Yeah.
But you have the power to live the season well.
That's right.
You can either be right now it's been raining, wherever we are. It's been like pouring down with rain. There's all this effort. You could carry an umbrella. Well, you can tell how I'm dressed.
Right.
I'm definitely not dressed in my usual gear.
Right.
Because I'm dressed for the rain. I'm prepared.
Yes.
Because that's all I can do. I can't make the rain switch off. I can't stop it, right? Like I can't do that.
Yeah.
And so I love hearing that you're just learning how to thrive in the season. And so if your season's telling you to rest, you can't force the season. And you have to live it through. You have to experience it.
I think you have to remember one thing, man. I think it's just easy as a person to forget this. And I just would love to say this because you have such an amazing reach. Each of you and I included, we were born to do something great with our life.